Chapter 908. Ever since Ouyang Weijian was defeated by Lu Ping in one move on Frost Island, he viewed it as a great humiliation. After the incident on Frost Island, Ouyang Weijian was sent to the Crystal Palace by Xianling sect. In Water Crystal Palace, Ouyang Weijian had to endure the discrimination and supercilious looks from everyone in Water Crystal Palace. There were even times when he had to become a practice target for those direct disciples. Even after being trampled on time and time again, he still had to put on a smiling face to welcome them. For Ouyang Weijian, who was regarded as a genius in Xianling sect, this was worse than death. However, he could only endure it. Because Ouyang Weijian, who was regarded as a rising star in the North Sea, couldn't find any sense of superiority among his peers here. In the Crystal Palace, there were plenty of people who had cultivated for roughly the same amount of time as him, but were far more powerful than him. His pride and dignity in the past were completely worthless in front of these people, and could only be used as a topic of conversation for them to despise him even more. But Ouyang Weijian endured it in the end. Over the years in the Crystal Palace, he no longer focused on improving his cultivation. Instead, he began to polish his own foundation. At the same time, he used the cultivation resources in the Crystal Palace to extensively study the specialties of various sections. He gradually began to learn from the strong points of others and compared them with his own natal sword art, the romantic Merry 18 Swords, which greatly improved his swordsmanship. As a result of his efforts, Ouyang Weijian was finally able to hold on against the air cultivators of Crystal Palace for a longer period of time. Eventually, he was able to stand on equal footing against them. Rather, he was even able to emerge victorious against cultivators of the same level as him. And the biggest change brought about by the increase in strength was that Ouyang Weijian gradually began to gain the recognition of these arrogant direct disciples. The previous supercilious looks and ridicule had disappeared, and Ouyang Weijian seemed to have once again returned to the ranks of the proud sons of heaven of the past. Over the years, although Ouyang Weijian did not deliberately improve his cultivation level, he had unknowingly raised his cultivation level to the peak of the core forging realm. Compared to his previous cultivation level, which had always been ahead of Lu Ping, Ouyang Weijian's cultivation speed was not as fast as before. However, Ouyang Weijian could feel that his strength had improved with each passing day. This time, Ouyang Weijian could be said to be full of confidence when he returned to the North Sea. He believed that this would definitely be a journey that would allow him to wash away his previous humiliation and make his name known throughout the North Sea. However, after he returned to the North Sea, a bucket of cold water poured over the confidence he had accumulated bit by bit over the years. Lu Xianping had defeated the Dharma adept, Tian Shu Laozu, as a core forging level 9 adept. This was impossible. Ouyang Weijian roared hysterically in his heart. This must be Zhenling's plot, a plot designed to make Lu Xianping famous, and the price was only the sacrifice of an ordinary Dharma adept's reputation. Compared to Zhenling's future, the sacrifice of an ordinary elder was nothing. Tian Shu must have gone easy on Lu Xianping. He desperately needed to verify this news. However, from his own sources, this news was true. Ouyang Weijian was able to persevere under the ridicule of the Crystal Palace adepts. Naturally, he was a person with a strong heart. Although the result of Lu Xianping defeating Dharma adept Laozu was a huge blow to Ouyang Weijian's confidence was not destroyed. He had stayed in the East Sea for decades, and his vision and knowledge were no longer comparable to before. There were many large and medium-sized sects in the Central Plains, or even overseas powerhouses like the Crystal Palace, who were able to cultivate disciples who could go up against ordinary early Dharma adepts, and even win against them. It was not as if they did not exist. But who were these people? They were all 1 in a million geniuses. They had fought their way out of the tens of thousands of adepts in each generation of the Crystal Palace, and they enjoyed the most precious training resources in the Crystal Palace. How could Lu Xianping be compared to these people? Even if Ouyang Weijian had trained in the Crystal Palace for 20 years, the most he could do was to fight a Dharma adept who had just entered the Dharma stage to a stalemate. Of course, this was because he was in a defensive position and was suppressed in all aspects. Although the opponent could not do anything to him at the moment, as time went on, Ouyang Weijian would definitely be defeated by his opponent due to the depletion of his inner yuan. Ouyang Weijian shook his head vigorously, dispelling these distracting thoughts from his mind. At this time, he suddenly thought of something and asked, "How long has it been? Why hasn't Lu Xianping come yet?" Ouyang Weijian's question made everyone's hearts clench. Mo Wei hesitated for a moment and said, "Could it be that Lu Xianping has already discovered the ambush here and has taken a detour elsewhere?" Just as Mo Wei's voice fell, the entire ground suddenly trembled. Even though everyone was a person with profound cultivation, they almost couldn't stand firmly on the ground. "What's going on?" Ouyang Weijian asked in shock. "There's something down there." The one who spoke was Ao Yong. The knuckles of his hands that were gripping the iron hammer were already faintly blue, and it was obvious that he was ready to strike. "Is it Lu Xuanping's doing?" Just as Mo Wei finished speaking, Zhou Tong had already brought out his thin water sword. But then there was a scream. Everyone was shocked. When they turned to look, they saw Mo Wei's eyes wide open as he stared at the tip of the sword sticking out of his chest. His eyes were filled with endless fear. He couldn't figure out who the murderer was. Was it Lu Xianping? How did he get behind him, and how did he manage to stab the flying sword into his back so accurately through the protective formation wall? However, he would never have the chance to get the answer to these questions. Zhou Tong, Ouyang Weijian, and Ao Li began to move together, gradually forming a triangle, directly facing Mo Wei's position. Zhou Tong's eyes narrowed as he watched the sword tip suddenly retract from Mo Wei's chest. He exclaimed, "Chang Lu's sword." Mo Wei fell as the sword tip retracted. The power of the protective wall behind him was greatly reduced due to the lack of the support of the spirit vein. The Chang Lu sword pierced through the protective wall again and began to cut a circle on the protective wall under the different gazes of the three people. Then, there was a clang, as if the person behind the protective wall had kicked it. The protective wall that was cut by the Chang Lu sword evaporated into specks of spirit qi and finally dissipated. Lu Ping strode in from behind the protective wall. The Chang Lu sword circled around him and began to vibrate rapidly. Lu Ping's gaze instantly lit up when he looked at Zhou Tong, and then he turned to look at Ouyang Weijian and Ao Li. He said, "So you're all acquaintances. I wonder how I should address you, fellow Taoist from the Shanghai sect." To be able to wield the thin water sword, this person's status in the Shanghai sect must not be low. To be able to join forces with Ouyang Weijian and Ao Li, this person's strength must have been acknowledged by the two. "You're Lu Xianping." Zhou Tong took a step forward and raised his chin slightly. "I'm Zhou Tong. I've long heard that you're known as the #1 cultivator below the Dharma stage in the North Sea. I wonder if you dare to fight the three of us today." "Zhou Tong. I've never heard of you, but I've fought with Zhang Shi from your sect before." Zhou Tong's face was choked to death by Lu Ping's words. Who was Zhang Shi? That was his teacher. In Zhou Tong's ears, Lu Ping's meaning was very clear. "Even your teacher couldn't do anything to me. Who do you think you are?" Lu Ping looked at this person with amusement. "I thought you wanted to fight me one-on-one. I didn't think that in the world of cultivation, even a group fight can be so righteous." Zhou Tong's face was already pale with anger. He pointed the thin water sword in his hand and said, "You're looking to die." Ouyang Weijian cursed inwardly. Zhou Tong had already charged forward with his sword. Ouyang Weijian and Ao Li had no choice but to attack him. Both of them cursed in their hearts. Where the hell did this kid come from? Was he a hothead? Zhou Tong was not a hothead. When Lu Ping mysteriously killed Mo Wei, he had already sensed that Ouyang Weijian and Ao Li had the intention to retreat. However, Zhou Tong couldn't back down, nor was he willing to back down. When he saw the flowing stream sword in Lu Ping's hand, he was already thinking of a way to tie Ao Li and Ouyang Weijian to his ship. What's more, Zhou Tong had full confidence in his 200 years of hard work. Even if Lu Xianping was really as strong as the legend said, they were not to be trifled with. Even if they were no match for him, they could still retreat unscathed. However, if he did not fight, he would lose the opportunity to obtain the flowing sword. Zhou Tong was truly unwilling. This thin water flowing sword was not only the sword of Songhai sect's founder, Laozu, but also the key to opening Vast Sea Laozu's cave mansion. Unfortunately, the Vast Sea relic had been taken away by others. If the Azure Sea sect had been able to work together, then even if there were others participating in the Azure Sea relic, the Azure Sea sect would have been able to obtain all the benefits before the other sections. It would not have been like now, where the Azure Sea sect had only obtained 10 to 20% of the relic, and there were quite a few treasures that were accidentally destroyed when they were forcibly breaking through the passport barrier. Songhai sect had the thin water flowing sword, but this was still the case for the other sects. In addition to the secret technique that could greatly increase the power of the thin water flowing sword, the thin water flowing sword hid a secret left by Vast Sea Laozu. But what this secret was, the cultivators of Songhai sect still did not know. They only knew that the thin water flowing sword was not only the key to opening the Vast Sea relic, but also the key to opening this secret. And this secret was hidden in the Vast Sea relic. The thin water flowing sword formed a silent sword light and stabbed towards Lu Ping in a very strange way. But halfway through, it was killed by the flowing sword, turning into waves of sword that attacked the thin water flowing sword. Ouyang Weijian's wind flowing sword and Mary's sword had already been condensed into two great magical powers by him. Indeed, after 3 days of separation, one must look at him in a different light. And when Lu Ping's beautiful autumn dew sword blocked the powerful attack of his two great sword magical powers, he was already sure that Ouyang Weijian had at least condensed a magical power talisman in the core space. However, Ouyang Weijian wasn't the only one among Shibi's trio. Lu Ping's twin flight swords stirred up a monstrous wave that carried an indomitable momentum. With just one strike, Ouyang Weijian's twin flight swords was shattered. At the same time, Lu Ping's right hand pulled and pushed. Layers of water nets extended forward in front of Lu Ping. Before spiritual master Ao Li's pair of iron hammers smashed down, he was trapped in the layers of water nets and could not extricate himself. Chapter 909. When Lu Ping sensed Mo Wei's aura, he had Debao sneak into the ground and then used Linglong to disturb the earth's veins, causing a strong earthquake nearby. Debao took advantage of the chaos to approach the surface and began to determine their positions. Although this would expose Debao to them, in the face of a sudden earthquake, Ouyang Weijian and the others' first thought was to protect themselves instead of trying to kill the peeping Mo Wei. Although they had thought of using the barrier space of the mountain shielding formation to trap Lu Ping and also calculated the direction Lu Ping would take, they had forgotten that the mountain shielding formation was on the verge of collapse and its defensive power was rapidly weakening. Moreover, the long stream sword in Lu Ping's hand had a natural restraining effect on the mountain shielding formation. Previously, if Lu Ping wanted to pierce through the mountain shielding formation, he would at least need Tiankong Laozu to smash it with his axe first. But now, Lu Ping could directly cut through the shield with the long stream sword. This was also the reason why Lu Ping was able to get behind them in such a short time. Although Zhou Tong had only been in the cultivation world for a short time, it did not mean that he did not know his own limits. Even if Lu Xuanping's defeat of his own sect's Laozu was fake, the fact that he had killed the Golden Jiao Island Lord's companion spirit beast in front of so many people could not be faked. Be it Ouyang Weijian or himself, neither of them had the strength to fight Lu Xianping alone. However, Mo Wei had been killed by Lu Ping at the beginning, so the formation that the four of them had prepared could not be used. If they really wanted to fight Lu Xianping to the death, the three of them would have to work together. However, in a situation where both Ouyang Weijian and Ao Li had the intention to retreat, Zhou Tong could only escape with them. Once the three of them split up and Lu Xianping decided to chase after them, the three of them would likely be defeated by him one by one. Zhou Tong brought Ouyang Weijian and Ao Li with him to fight Lu Ping and try to snatch the long stream sword in Lu Ping's hand. However, they all ignored the fact that although Lu Ping was known as the Water Sword Immortal, he was never a pure sword cultivator. Under Lu Ping's moving mountains and filling seas, Ao Li's twin hammers would be inexplicably diverted every time he struck. Or when he struck with his hammers, countless forces would appear from all directions, wearing down the power of his hammers layer by layer. In the end, he had no choice but to withdraw his exhausted hammers. Otherwise, once he was trapped in Lu Ping's Zhenyuan net, he might not even be able to protect his magic weapon. Ao Li was at a loss. If he advanced, his attacks would not be able to get close to Lu Ping. If he retreated, Lu Ping's Zhenyuan net would wrap around him at any time. When that happened, Ao Li would be at his mercy. He could only bite the bullet and cooperate with Ouyang Weijian and Zhou Tong to attack Lu Xianping. This was not them besieging Lu Xianping. In reality, Lu Xianping alone was entangling the three of them. Although they had already overestimated Lu Xuanping's strength, the truth was that the pride in their hearts made them unwilling to see Lu Xianping as an opponent on a higher level than them. They only subconsciously saw him as an expert on the same level as themselves. The reason was very simple. Only by doing so would they have the courage to continue chasing after Lu Xianping. Otherwise, they would forever lose the qualifications to stand in front of Lu Xianping. Seeing the situation clearly, Ao Li wanted to retreat. But at this moment, there seemed to be a huge flaw on Lu Ping's side. Lu Ping's Sea of 100 Rivers Flow sword skill suddenly crumbled, but it wasn't a complete collapse. Instead, it was more like a torrent of water gushing out of the east-flowing river sword skill. The autumn waters flowing sword skill swept up a monstrous wave, and with an unstoppable momentum, Lu Ping executed the east-flowing river sword skill to its fullest. When Zhou Tong saw that Lu Ping suddenly shifted the focus of his attack to Ouyang Weijian, he was overjoyed. He did not care about cooperating with Ouyang Weijian and directly rushed forward to snatch the flowing river sword. Lu Ping's divine sense suddenly felt a tug. If Lu Ping had not poured enough true essence into the flowing river sword, then even if he did not seize the flowing river sword, he would have made Lu Ping suffer a loss. The Blue Sea sect really had a secret technique on the flowing river sword. Lu Ping's mind turned, and his divine sense and true essence simultaneously mobilized. Without weakening the power of the Great River Flow's East Sword technique, he began to fight with Zhou Tong for control of the flowing river sword. At this time, Ao Li finally saw a flaw. At this time, Lu Xianping had placed most of his attention on Ouyang Weijian and Zhou Tong. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Ao Li threw the pair of iron hammers up, and the hammers that were originally 1 foot long doubled in size. Ao Li held them tightly in his hands and spun them twice before they flew out. The pair of iron hammers smashed towards Lu Ping with great power. The net of true essence that had formed in front of Lu Ping was instantly torn apart in the face of absolute power. Ao Li was already imagining the scene of Lu Ping's flesh and blood splattering everywhere. He could not help but lick his lips, but then his eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost. Boom! Lu Ping's entire body was smashed to pieces, but the scene of flesh and blood splattering everywhere did not appear. Instead, it was as if a torrential rain had fallen from the sky. At the same time, another Lu Ping strangely appeared in front of Zhou Tong. How could this be? At the moment when the iron hammers smashed into Lu Ping's body, Ao Li's divine will could still clearly feel the vitality flowing through Lu Ping's body. How could it have changed so suddenly? Could it be that Lu Xianping had already mastered the space magic before he had even reached the Dharma stage? Thinking of this, Ao Li could not help but feel a thump in his heart. When he turned to look, a shocking scene appeared again. Ouyang Weijian had actually escaped. Yes, he had escaped. When Ouyang Weijian saw Lu Ping suddenly display such a magnificent great magic swordsmanship, he already knew that Lu Ping's target was not him. Naturally, Ouyang Weijian did not have the ability to resist such a great magic swordsmanship, but this did not mean that Ouyang Weijian could not escape or dodge this great magic swordsmanship. In a situation where there were many people attacking, such a large-scale great magic swordsmanship was not worth using. This was because in a situation where the opponent could escape or dodge, the cultivator would only be wasting their true essence and dermic powers in vain. Lu Xianping had been cultivating for more than 100 years and had fought countless battles, big and small. How could he not know this? But he still did it. This meant that Lu Xianping had other intentions. He was creating an opportunity for himself, an opportunity to break out of the situation. But this opportunity was under Lu Ping's great magic swordsmanship, and Ouyang Weijian could not stop it. Was Lu Xianping still invincible? A sense of helplessness swept through Ouyang Weijian. He clearly knew Lu Xuanping's intentions, but he could not stop it. Since he could not stop it, this battle was bound to be lost. Then he had to escape. Fortunately, Lu Xuanping's use of this great magic swordsmanship meant that the person he was plotting against was not him. He could use this opportunity to escape. Otherwise, once Lu Xianping broke out of the situation, the first person he would kill would definitely be him. Ouyang Weijian turned around and fled. This time, he did not even have to deliberately dodge the great river flow's east sword technique behind him. Aoli was only stunned for a moment. Suddenly, his entire body shivered, and he also turned around and crashed into the protective wall in the other direction. At this time, there was nothing he did not understand. His priority was to save his life. Fortunately, the formation was getting weaker. The protective formation in the sky was already so clear that it was almost transparent. Only a thin layer of membrane was left. Before Aoli left, he did not forget to turn around and shoot a pitiful glare at Zhou Tong, only to see Lu Xianping suddenly appear in front of Zhou Tong. Under Zhou Tong's horrified expression, a misty white light struck Zhou Tong's body, causing him to be stunned. At this moment, countless streams of sword qi strangely poured into his body like water. Then, Zhou Tong's entire body began to change shape, as if his skin and flesh were being separated. Aoli was scared out of his wits. There was only one thought left in his mind, and that was to never be Lu Xuanping's enemy again in this life. Lu Ping frowned as he looked at Zhou Tong's dead state. Even he himself took a deep breath. Lu Ping didn't expect that the water seep sword skill could be used in such a way. However, this method was a little too cruel. He didn't expect that he would be able to kill Zhou Tong in such a unique way when he didn't use his flying swords. Lu Ping did not doubt that as long as he made a cut on Zhou Tong's body, he could completely peel off a piece of human skin. Lu Ping shook his hand and shot out a silver flame, turning Zhou Tong's body into flying ash. Only then did he take the ownerless thin water sword. Bluish-purple true essence surged out from his hand and the foreign true essence in the thin water sword was completely expelled. The lingering true essence in the thin water sword was also annihilated by Lu Ping's divine sense. Even if Lu Ping's true essence was vigorous and tyrannical, it was still beyond Lu Ping's ability to refine the thin water sword as smoothly as the Changlu sword in a short period of time. He could only carefully polish it in the future. However, just as Lu Ping began to refine the thin water sword, the Changlu sword unconsciously began to hover around the thin water sword. As Lu Ping completed the initial refinement, not only the Changlu sword, but the thin water sword also began to tremble violently. The two flying swords seemed to be resonating with each other. The clear and melodious sword cry even shattered the large protective array behind Lu Ping. Lu Ping's expression changed. He put away the two swords and grabbed De Bao from the ground. His feet flashed and he fled towards the periphery. The protective barrier that was originally shattered by the sword cry of the two swords was like a signal. The already precarious mountain protective array on the entire lonely peak instantly began to collapse on a large scale. A ray of light suddenly landed in the area where Lu Ping was previously. Dongyi Laozu walked out of the ray of light with a cold face. The traces of the fight caused Dongyi Laozu's expression to change again and again. In the end, he could only fly away with a trace of luck. Chapter 9-10. Lu Ping sprinted all the way down the mountain and recalled the purple crystal bees. He didn't even bother to collect the spiritual herbs on the ground. He exited the mountain range's formation and fled in a conveyance light. Behind Lu Ping, with the complete collapse of the Lone Peak formation, the entire Lone Peak began to shake. Countless sand and stones fell from the Lone Peak, which then developed into a large-scale collapse of the mountain. In the end, the entire mountain began to collapse. Lu Ping didn't stop at all along the way. The news of Zhou Tong's death hadn't spread yet. If Dongyi Laozu got the news, he would definitely do everything possible to hunt him down. Now he could only fly all the way back to Tianling Mountain to be the safest. Otherwise, even if he stayed on the island under Jinling's jurisdiction, he might be found by the furious Dongyi Laozu. However, Lu Ping had to stop after flying for less than 10 miles. But Lu Ping wasn't worried at all. Instead, he was greatly relieved. Celestial Phenomenon Laozu looked at Lu Ping, who stopped in front of him, and asked with a smile, "Kid, you are running away in such a hurry. Is there anyone in the North Sea who dares to hunt you down?" Lu Ping took a deep breath and stepped forward to say respectfully, "Disciple greets Grand Uncle Master." After thinking about it, he bowed to the old man next to him and said, "Junior greets Senior Dao Sheng." Lu Ping didn't know why the two giants of the North Sea would appear here, but there was no doubt that he couldn't be lacking in etiquette. After bowing, Lu Ping said, "Disciple seems to have caused trouble. Grand Uncle Master Tian Kong has other matters to attend to, so Disciple has to return to Tianling Mountain first to seek protection from the sect." "Oh." Celestial Phenomenon Laozu smiled and said, "It seems that you have caused a lot of trouble in the North Sea." As soon as Celestial Phenomenon Laozu's voice fell, a long roar came from afar with strong anger and murderous intent. Celestial Phenomenon Laozu raised his head and looked in the direction of the roar. He said, "It seems that you have caused a lot of trouble. Daoist Dongyi seems to be very angry. Could it be that you are going to kill Zhang Shi?" "Ah." Lu Ping was stunned and said, "I know my limits. I can't kill Zhang Shi's disciple. But it seems that Zhang Shi's disciple was killed by me." Ancestor Dong Yi landed heavily on the surface of the sea, his face cold as he stared at Lu Xianping, who was standing in front of Ancestor Tian Xiang. Terrifying killing intent surged from his body. However, in front of these two supreme figures of the North Sea cultivation world, Dongyi Laozu had no choice but to retract his aura. Lu Ping told Dongyi Laozu and Celestial Phenomenon Laozu and Dao Xing Laozu about how Zhou Tong and the other three failed to ambush Lu Ping and how Lu Ping killed two of them instead. Celestial Phenomenon Laozu smiled at Dongyi Laozu and said, "Daoist Dongyi, did this grand disciple make any mistakes?" Dongyi Laozu snorted coldly but didn't say anything. Obviously, he had tacitly agreed that Lu Ping was telling the truth. Seeing that Dongyi Laozu didn't say anything, Celestial Phenomenon Laozu continued, "Daoist Dongyi, you came here in such a threatening manner. Is there something important that you want my grand disciple to do?" Dongyi Laozu snorted, but he didn't dare to be presumptuous in front of Celestial Phenomenon Laozu. He cupped his hands and said, "Daoist Tianxiang, it wasn't easy to raise my grand disciple to die in the hands of your sect's disciple. Don't you have an explanation?" Celestial Phenomenon Laozu asked curiously, "Oh, what explanation does Daoist Dongyi want?" Dongyi Laozu suppressed his anger and said, "Even if my grand disciple plotted against your sect's cultivator first, he still died in the hands of your sect's enlightened Lu Xianping. Death is a big deal. In that case, should enlightened Lu Xianping return our sect's Canghai Laozu's thin water unending sword?" Celestial Phenomenon Laozu and Dao Xing Laozu looked at Lu Ping in shock. Lu Ping said, "May I ask Senior Dongyi, did your sect bring the thin water unending sword into the Canghai legacy?" Dong Laozu's face darkened, but he didn't dare to deny it in front of the two celestial phenomenon Laozu. He could only say, no, but the thin water unending sword belongs to our sect's ancestor, Songhai Laozu. This is a well-known fact in the North Sea cultivation world. Celestial phenomenon Laozu understood Lu Ping's meaning. He turned to Dong Laozu and said, "This is Taoist Dong's fault. I've long heard that your sect has found the thin water unending sword, but there has been no news of the flowing sword. This means that the flowing sword doesn't belong to your sect. Since my grand disciple obtained it, it naturally belongs to him. What belongs to Songhai Laozu doesn't also belong to your sect." Dong Laozu angrily said, "Songhai Laozu is our sect's ancestor, this is a well-known fact. Our sect has inherited the thin water unending sword for thousands of years. How can you say that the flowing sword doesn't belong to our sect?" Lu Ping argued, "Songhai Laozu is the ancestor of the giant whale demon race, Laozu. According to what Senior Dongi said, the thin water unending sword should also be an inheritance of the giant whale demon race." Lu Ping's words were clearly out of the expectations of celestial phenomenon Laozu and Dao Xing Laozu. Both of them looked at Dong Laozu with inquisitive eyes. Dong Laozu fiercely glared at Lu Ping. Unexpectedly, a voice came from behind him, "Fellow Taoist Dongi, don't tell me you want to deny it." On the lonely mountain peak, that giant whale demon King Kong Jing was able to ring the Songhai bell. Let me ask you, other than your Songhai sect, who else can ring the Songhai bell without refining it? Tian Kong Laozu descended from the sky, clasping his hands towards celestial phenomenon Laozu and Dao Xing Laozu. He looked at Dong Laozu and said, "Could it be that your Songhai sect has colluded with the giant whale demon race and revealed the Songhai sect's inheritance to them?" What nonsense! Facing Tian Kong Laozu, Dong did not feel the pressure that he felt when facing the two great cultivators. He said sternly, "How could my Songhai sect collude with the demon race?" Tian Kong Laozu looked up to the sky and laughed twice in surprise. He said, "That's strange. The monster cultivator Laozu's sect is irreconcilable with the demon race. In that case, the legacy of the founder of the sect, Laozu, should not belong to your Songhai sect. Fellow Taoist Dongi, please go back." Dong Laozu hated Tian Kong Laozu for exposing the Songhai sect's secret, but at this moment, he was under the eaves. He could only say in a low voice, "Well, even if the Changlu sword was obtained by your sect's spiritual master Lu Xianping, the thin water sword was obtained by him from a cultivator of our sect. This is not wrong. Please return the thin water sword to the old man." Tian Kong Laozu's face also darkened. He said, "Aha, is it right and proper for your sect's disciple to ambush a cultivator of our sect? If the ambush failed, we would have to exchange the weapon back and wait for your next sneak attack. How can there be such a good thing in the world?" Dong Laozu became serious at this time. He turned to Dao Xing Laozu and said, "Fellow Taoist Dao Xing, among the cultivators who ambushed Lu Xianping was Ouyang Weijian of your sect. He was the one who told the old man about the matter of our sect's disciple being killed. What do you think?" Dao Xing Laozu had not said much since he and Tian Xiang Laozu arrived, but Dong Laozu's words forced him to express his opinion. He frowned and said, "Fellow Taoist Dong Yi, it's better to give this matter further thought." Dong Laozu did not expect Dao Xing Laozu, who was known as the #1 expert in the North Sea cultivation world, to say something like this. After a moment of shock, he laughed angrily and said, "Fellow Taoist Dao Xing, perhaps you still don't know that your sect's Feng Shutao has been injured by Tian Kong. He has no hope of advancing to the late Dharma stage in this life. Now that you know this, I wonder if you will give this matter further thought." Tian Xiang Laozu's face suddenly darkened. Tian Kong Laozu reached out to touch the storage bag at his waist and looked at Dong Laozu with a hint of murderous intent. Dao Xing Laozu was silent for a moment before he suddenly said, "The old man already knew about this matter. This is also one of the reasons why Brother Tian Xiang and the old man came here. Fellow Taoist Dong Yi, if there is nothing else, please go back first." Dongyi Laozu, who had calmed down, finally sensed something from Dao Xing Laozu's retreat, so he did not say anything and turned to leave. Tian Xiang Laozu looked at Tian Kong Laozu and Lu Ping, then turned to Tian Kong Laozu and said, "Junior brother, you go back to Tianling Mountain first." The old man and brother Daoist Dao Xing still have things to discuss. After Tian Kong Laozu had left, Tian Xiang Laozu suddenly said, "Feng Shutao should not join forces with the demons." After a moment, Dao Xing Laozu said, "Feng Shutao has no hope of advancing, so he has been punished." "That's not enough. This cannot be allowed to happen." Dao Xing Laozu sighed and said, "What is brother Tian Xiang planning?" Tian Xiang Laozu smirked and said, "With Qiao Feizhou gone, there is one less Dharma plane cultivator among the 12 families of North Sea." Dao Xing Laozu came to a realization and said, "The spirit stone mine of Frost Island." Tian Xiang Laozu nodded slightly and said, 25 of the share belongs to Jinling." Dao Xing Laozu sighed and said, "Good." The two stood there without moving. After a while, it was Dao Xing Laozu who spoke first and said, "The ocean bell is of great importance. What do you think, brother Tian Xiang?" Tian Xiang Laozu did not hesitate and said, "Let's recruit them based on our own abilities. As long as it does not affect our plan to fight against Mara, we will not interfere. Otherwise, we will lose the support of the hundreds of thousands of lone cultivators in the North Sea." Dao Xing Laozu thought for a moment and said, "All right, this person is quite lucky." Tian Xiang Laozu did not comment and said, "Let's go, don't let the two of the demon race wait too long." This universe island collapsed suddenly, and there are many things left inside. "Let's let our disciples practice." Lu Ping followed Tian Kong Laozu and flew all the way to a medium-sized island closest to Universe Island under Jinling's jurisdiction. There was a teleportation formation here that led directly to Heaven's Spirit Mountain. It was only then that Lu Ping thought of something. He asked, "Martial Granduncle, who obtained the ocean bell?" Tian Kong Laozu looked like he had seen a ghost and said, "Xiang Lu." "Who?" Lu Ping thought he had heard wrong and said, "How could it be him?" Chapter 9:11. This time, the vast sea relic that caused such a stir in the entire North Sea, the ultimate beneficiary was not the various demon tribes that were well prepared, nor was it the various human sects, but a lone practitioner. Out of all the treasures in the vast sea relic, the one that was truly regarded as the number one treasure was the vast sea bell that Laozu of the vast sea had used to awe the world. And this vast sea bell had been fought over by the various North Sea forces and Dharma adepts, but in the end, it had fallen into the hands of the lone practitioner, Xiang Lu Laozu. So, in order to prevent Dongyi Laozu from obtaining the vast sea bell, you tried to knock it away. Unexpectedly, the lone peak suddenly began to shake, and the entire formation's speed of collapse accelerated. Due to a moment of carelessness, your hand missed the vast sea bell, which was originally intended for the giant whale demon King Kong Jing, and it fell straight into Xiang Lu Laozu's hands. The mountain-splitting axe was also unable to stop in time, and it killed an early Dharma adept who came forward to join in the fun. And this fallen Laozu seemed to be from the Qiao family that had deep ties with Xianling sect. Looking at Lu Ping's strange and incredulous look, Tian Kong Laozu said, "Don't doubt me, this is what happened." Tian Kong Laozu continued, "Speaking of which, it's strange. If the earthquake hadn't happened so suddenly and violently, the old man's mountain-splitting axe would not have missed." Thinking of this, Tian Kong Laozu seemed to have thought of something and said, "Kid, don't tell me that the earthquake was caused by you. You have the Linglong wine cauldron, a spiritual treasure that can control the direction of the Earth's meridians. Causing an earthquake is not a difficult task." Lu Ping laughed awkwardly and said, "How is that possible?" "But I feel that Uncle Master, when you killed Qiao Feizhou with one blow, it seemed like it was intentional." Tian Kong Laozu chuckled and said, "You want to know? First, tell me if you were the one who caused the earthquake." Lu Ping looked behind Tian Kong Laozu and said with a smile, "Aya, the teleportation portal has started to activate." "Little fox. Old fox. The two of them cursed inwardly, then stepped into the teleportation array. After a flash of white light, the two of them arrived at Heaven's Spirit Mountain. On Heaven's Spirited Mountain, Lu Ping widened his eyes and said, "What? When did the beast race invade Huangli Island? How is Huangli Island now?" "Senior brother Lu, don't worry. Huangli Island is safe and sound." Looking at the furious Lu Ping, Zhang Xuancheng and Deng Jia felt their blood freeze. Only when facing the furious Lu Ping could they, as fellow disciples, directly feel the gap between them and Lu Ping. When Lu Ping heard that Huangli Island was fine, he calmed down a little. But when he saw Zhang Xuancheng and Zhang Xian struggling under his suppression, he calmed down and asked, "Junior Marshal Brother Zhang, what's going on?" It turned out that after the vast sea relics had been forcefully opened, Lu Ping had already followed Tian Kong Laozu into the relics. At that time, almost the entire North Sea's attention was drawn to the vast sea relics, and at that time, 3 Dharma adepts from the demon race came together, wanting to seize Huangli Island. The demons' plan was very well thought out. The reason why they had set the rule that only a mid-Dharma adept and a core forging adept could enter the relic was because they knew that Zhenling's sect would definitely send someone like Lu Xianping, who was almost invincible among the core forging adepts. Without Lu Xianping, Huangli Island would naturally not be a threat to the Dharma adepts. If the Dharma adepts of the demon race, Laozu, took the opportunity to attack, they would naturally be able to take down Huangli Island easily. Even if Lu Xianping did not enter the vast sea relics, a mid-Dharma adept and 2 early Dharma adepts would be enough to defeat Lu Xianping and take advantage of Zhenling's attention being drawn to the vast sea relics to take down Huangli Island. The demon race's information was very accurate. The 3 mid-Dharma adepts of Zhenling Laozu had all been sent out, and Laozu, who was a heavenly adept, would definitely be held back by the 2 demon kings because of the vast sea relics. At this time, there were only a few early Dharma adepts guarding Tianling Mountain. Even if these people received the news and came in time, with the 3 mid-Dharma adepts, the 3 demon Laozu could easily defeat them. However, just as the 3 demon Laozu arrived at Huangli Island aggressively, they were blocked by one person. Jiang Tianlin Laozu stood calmly in front of the 3 demon cultivators, but the 3 demon cultivators Laozu's hearts sank all the way to the bottom. When did this Jiang Tianlin pass the thunder trial? Why did they not know anything about it? The 3 demon cultivators Laozu were filled with hatred, but now they had no choice but to face the person in front of them. The demon race's original plan was very good. They wanted to take advantage of the fact that Zhenling's mid-Dharma adepts Laozu and heavenly adept Laozu were busy, and then use a mid-Dharma adept to attack and take over Huangli Island. This way, they could use the power of their cultivation to defeat everyone in Zhenling. However, no matter how much they thought about it, they did not expect that Jiang Tianlin, who had been staying in Tianling Mountain to prepare for his first thunder trial, had already reached the mid-Dharma stage. Zhenling's mid-Dharma adept Laozu might not be able to handle it, but Laozu did not lack early Dharma adepts. Once someone was able to block the demon race's mid-Dharma demon king, then the remaining 2 early Dharma demon kings would not be able to do much. However, just as the 3 demon cultivators thought that there were other Dharma adepts lying in ambush in Zhenling, Jiang Tianlin Laozu made the first move. This Jiang Tianlin actually dared to fight against the 3 of them alone. Where did he get such courage from? Just based on the fact that he had just cultivated a Dharma soul to advance to the mid-Dharma stage. The Dharma soul might be of some use before a cultivator advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, as it could give him an advantage over other cultivators of the same stage. However, after advancing to the mid-Dharma stage, the advantages of the Dharma soul would be lost. At this point, Jiang Tianlin would be no different from other mid-Dharma adepts. The 3 demon cultivators Laozu rushed forward together, but the result was depressing. Although Jiang Tianlin had just advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, his level of practice was enough to suppress the mid-Dharma demon king, and he even had the strength to deal with the attacks from the other 2 early Dharma demon kings. For a moment, Jiang Tianlin Laozu was still able to hold his own against the three of them. As time dragged on, it seemed that Jinling's reinforcements would arrive soon. The three Laozu demon kings began to use their trump cards. Since there was no hope of conquering Huangli Island, as long as they could seriously injure Jiang Tianlin, the top expert among the second-generation disciples of Jinling, it would be a worthwhile trip. However, at this moment, Jiang Tianlin Laozu took out a small tree. Strictly speaking, it was a small tree-shaped treasure, and there were 108 green leaves hanging from it. The mid-Dharma demon king gasped. This was not an ordinary treasure, it was obviously a spirit treasure. Since when did Jinling have a spirit treasure like this? Wasn't it said that Jinling only had 4 spirit treasures, and none of them were in Jiang Tianlin's hands? Originally, he could have fought the 3 demon kings to a draw without using a spirit treasure. When Jiang Tianlin Laozu took out the spirit treasure wood and used it with his own spirit treasure, the 3 unprepared demon kings were quickly suppressed by Jiang Tianlin Laozu. This time, they were not evenly matched, but they had the upper hand. Originally, the 3 demon kings thought that they could escape unscathed. Unexpectedly, there was a peak core forging adept hiding nearby with an extremely high level of concealment. Although the 2 mid-Dharma Laozu demon kings had noticed, they did not pay much attention. The 2 early Dharma demon kings did not notice anything at all. Who would have thought that in the end, this hidden cultivator would suddenly make a move after Patriarch Jiang Tianlin had the upper hand? He actually managed to seriously injure one of the early Dharma stage demon kings when they were caught off guard. This was beyond the expectations of all the Dharma adepts, including Jiang Tianlin Laozu demon kings. The situation on the battlefield changed once again. With 6th Brother Lei's sudden attack and restraint, Jiang Tianlin Laozu demon kings had complete control of the situation. In the end, the other early Dharma demon king was also injured by Laozu Jiang Tianlin's fallen petals, and his vitality was taken away for tens of years. The mid-Dharma demon king took the opportunity to escape from Laozu Jiang Tianlin's control and rescued the 2 injured early Dharma demon kings. The demon clan's attack on Huangli Island had failed once again. However, the impact of the battle on Huangli Island on the entire North Sea was even greater than the vast sea treasure. This was mainly because of 3 things that had happened during the battle. The first was naturally the outcome of the battle. Jiang Tianlin Laozu had successfully advanced to the mid-Dharma stage and had a first calamity spirit treasure. He had battled against the demon kings of the demon clan and was not at a disadvantage even though he had fought 1 against 3. This had a huge impact on the entire North Sea. The number of Dharma adepts in Jinling had already caused the entire North Sea to look askance. Jiang Tianlin Laozu Jiang Tianlin's powerful strength after advancing to the mid-Dharma stage had caused a huge impact on the entire North Sea training world. Then, there was the appearance of that spirit treasure. In addition to the wine-cup-shaped auxiliary spirit treasure that Jiang Tianlin had previously obtained in the Yingtian dojo, as well as Patriarch Tiankong's invincibility in the vast sea relics with a second tribulation spirit treasure, Jinling sect now had at least 7 spirit treasures in front of the cultivation world of the North Sea, 2 of which were second tribulation spirit treasures. However, who knew if there would be an 8th spirit treasure appearing in Jinling? The second matter was the peak core forging adept, 6th Brother Lei, who had taken the opportunity to injure an early Dharma adept of the demon clan. Information about this person was quickly gathered by the various sects in the North Sea. They only knew that this person was not a Jinling adept but had been appearing in Huangli Island for the past 20 years. He seemed to have a close relationship with the owner of Huangli Island, Lu Xianping. However, the thing that made the entire North Sea training world shudder was the fallen petals profundity that Jiang Tianlin Laozu had used to injure the early Dharma adept. After Jiang Tianlin Laozu Jiang Tianlin had advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, he had also successfully elevated his natural great ability to the supreme level. This was also the first time in 100 years that a supreme ability had been used in a battle in the North Sea training world. However, this was not the main point. The main point was that the fallen petal's profundity contained a nature-defying effect, and that was to deprive one's life force. 108 green leaves, each representing 1 year of life force. Perhaps the combined attack of 108 natal magic treasures would not be able to kill the opponent, but it would be able to rob a cultivator of his life force for 108 years. The early Dharma adept Demon King had been hit by Jiang Tianlin Laozu's 36 emerald green leaves. Even after recovering from his injuries, his lifespan would be shortened by 36 years. Chapter 9:12. After Lu Ping returned to Huangli Island, he learned about the details from Hu Lili. His teacher, Lu Tianling, had already sent someone over to find out more about Lei Laoyu's background. A cultivator who was at the peak of the core forging stage and could even fight against an early Dharma demon king had suddenly appeared in front of everyone in Jinling. Not only would the sect pay special attention to him, but even Jiang Tianlin Laozu had personally come to ask about Lei Laoyu's background. Lu Ping had no choice but to tell Jiang Tianlin Laozu about the process of subduing Lei Laolu. After hearing that Lei Laolu had actually been placed under the soul-controlling restriction by Lu Ping, the way he looked at Lu Ping changed. For someone like Lei Laolu, not just in Jinling, but even in the 5 holy lands of Middle-earth and the East Sea Crystal Sect, he was like a direct disciple. Even in the North Sea, perhaps only Ouyang Weijian could compare to him. However, this person, who would be nurtured as a treasure in any sect, had been used by Lu Ping to guard his home with the soul-controlling restriction. Not to mention Jiang Tianlin Laozu, even if Tianxiang Laozu was here, he would not feel the same way. After sending off Jiang Tianlin Laozu, Lu Ping gave Hu Lili the 4 spirit-gathering pearls that he had obtained from the vast sea relic, then went into the secret room. After spending nearly a month, Lu Ping had finally refined the thin water sword to the point where it was like the flowing water sword. Just as Lu Ping finished refining the thin water sword, the flowing water sword combined and swam around Lu Ping's body like a pair of fish. The cheerful sound of the sword echoed throughout the secret room. Lu Ping's divine will captured something as the flying swords circled around him. As the 2 swords trembled, Lu Ping's divine will seemed to sense that something had broken. He hurriedly probed into the swords and found that a layer of previously undetectable restriction runes was undergoing a rapid transformation. Lu Ping did not know the depth of it, but thinking back to when Dongyi Laozu had repeatedly asked for the thin water sword, there must be some secret hidden within the flying swords. At this moment, the transformation of the hidden restriction runes was completed. Lu Ping's inner yuan and divine will instantly refine the newly formed restriction runes. Lu Ping's expression suddenly changed to one of joy. What a brilliant restriction technique! It was actually able to hide a treasure restriction in such a mysterious and ingenious manner. When the 2 swords of the thin water unending flow sword were separated, the treasure restriction that was connected to each other was hidden in the runes of the other treasure restriction. If one wasn't a tool refining Grand Master, it would be very difficult for them to detect the difference. At this time, whether it was the thin water sword or the flowing water sword, on their own, they just looked like spirit-nurturing magic treasures that had condensed 8 restrictions. Once the 2 swords combined and the hidden restriction runes were activated, the flying sword's 9th restriction runes would automatically form and become a top spirit-nurturing magic treasure. Lu Ping's divine will could clearly sense the extremely strong spirituality hidden within the 2 flying swords. This was the characteristic of a magic treasure that had reached the peak of the spirit-nurturing level. It only needed to pass the lightning tribulation and condense pure yang qi to become a spirit treasure. The beautiful autumn water sword in Lu Ping's hands could also be considered a rather good pair of flying swords. However, compared to the thin water sword that belonged to Canghai Laozu, the gap was really not easy to make up for. Lu Ping looked at the pair of flying swords with a joyful expression. With this pair of flying swords, Lu Ping's strength would be greatly improved. However, this pair of flying swords would also cause a lot of trouble. At least, the Canghai sect would look for any opportunity to take back this pair of swords that belonged to the founder of their sect, including killing Lu Ping. However, after being warned by celestial phenomenon Laozu, that Shanghai sect would at least not make a move on him for a short period of time. However, Lu Ping did not dare to be careless. After killing Zhou Tong and snatching the thin water sword, the hatred between Lu Ping and the Shanghai sect could no longer be resolved. The only thing that eased was the mutual scruples between the two sections. After all, the situation in the North Sea was becoming increasingly serious. If the two sects fought, regardless of victory or defeat, the strength of the human race would be weakened. Lu Ping's heart moved and he took out the stone box that De Bao found in the depths of the lonely peak. Lu Ping carefully injected qi into the stone box, and the mysterious runes on the surface of the stone box suddenly lit up. At this time, the thin water-long sword around Lu Ping also seemed to resonate with the stone box. The sword body tilted and the sword tip pointed towards the stone box. Lu Ping thought to himself that this thin water-long sword was not only the key to opening the Shanghai sect's treasure, but it was also the key to opening the mysterious stone box. Lu Ping's heart moved, and two sword lights were fired from the pair of flying swords, directly shooting towards the surface of the stone box. The scene of stone chips bursting out did not appear as he imagined. The flashing runes on the surface of the stone box suddenly lit up. When the two sword lights hit the stone box, they completely submerged into the runes. Then the runes on the entire surface of the stone box began to flow. The speed of the flow was so fast that even Lu Ping's spiritual force could not capture it. At this moment, he heard a "kacha" sound, and a fine crack appeared in the middle of the stone box. Lu Ping was overjoyed and slowly opened the stone box. A purple jade slip lay in the middle of the stone box. Lu Ping raised his eyebrows and held the jade slip in his hand. His spiritual force quickly entered it and began to read the contents. As he read it, a few days passed. It was not that the contents were complicated, but that the jade slip recorded a set of supreme sword technique inheritance of Shanghai Laozu. Lu Ping was momentarily fascinated by it and began to figure out and cultivate it on the spot. Therefore, it was delayed for a few days. However, although this sword technique inheritance was precious, what Lu Ping valued more was what was recorded at the end of the jade slip. After Lu Ping came out of seclusion, the first news he heard was that there were problems with the spirit veins drawn from the various sects of the North Sea and the demon race's vast sea heritage. First, Jinling, who was closer to Huanyu Island, claimed that out of the 5 medium-sized spirit veins that Tian Kong Laozu had drawn from the Lone Peak, only 3 ended up in Jinling's main spirit veins. Back then, Tian Kong Laozu had forcefully snatched away 5 medium-sized spirit veins from the Lone Peak. At that time, he had offended many people. Therefore, after hearing this news, many people from the various sects of the North Sea and even the demon race clapped their hands and secretly mocked Jinling for getting what he deserved. However, not long after, news came from Feiyu and Lingu's sects that only half of the spirit veins they had drawn from the Lone Peak ended up in their sections. At this time, the North Sea cultivators began to realize that there seemed to be a problem. Sure enough, Yujin sect and Chongming sect both claimed that the spirit veins they had drawn were severely depleted. Out of the 2 medium-sized spirit veins, only 1.5 were in their hands. Even Xiang Lu Laozu, who had obtained the vast sea bell and had been hiding until now, released the news that he had only obtained half a medium-sized spirit vein. This time, other than Xian Ling sect, the other sects were no longer gloating. Due to Feng Shutao's foolish actions, Xian Ling sect's losses in the vast sea heritage almost outweighed their gains. When the entire Xian Ling sect received the news of the severe depletion of the spirit veins, they naturally cheered loudly. It was just that these cheers made people feel sour. Lu Ping smiled. If the various sects knew that the strange depletion of the spirit veins was actually caused by Lu Ping, who knew how many sects would come knocking on his door. However, 9 medium-sized spirit veins were almost equivalent to the replenishment of a large spirit vein. To the entire Jinling sect, this was undoubtedly a great boost. Soon after, Lu Ping received news from Hu Lili that Huanyu Island had become a trial ground for the blood condensation disciples of the various sections. Thinking of the broken formations, restrictions, and protective walls that covered the entire Huanyu Island after the collapse of the Lone Peak, as well as the large amount of spirit herbs and materials that had yet to be collected, and even the treasures and instruments that were discarded on the island, Lu Ping thought to himself that no wonder. It must be the idea of the two great cultivators, Tian Xiang Laozu and Dao Xing Laozu that day. Otherwise, the sects wouldn't be so cautious in following this rule. Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, "It just so happens that I have a few things that I need to do after I return to Huanyu Island. However, I can't go now, so I'll send a few disciples over." Hu Lili said in surprise, "Didn't you just come out from there? Did you leave some treasures inside?" Lu Ping smiled bitterly and said, "You can say that. I didn't expect those things to be so important at that time. I hope it's not too late and that the trial disciples of the various sects haven't gotten to them before me." Lu Ping summoned the Fang siblings and Sun Wu. The three of them were already at the peak of the blood condensation realm and were only one step away from advancing to the core forging realm. He told the three what he wanted to find one by one, then sent them to Huanyu Island to train on their own. At the same time, he told them not to reveal the purpose of this trip. If anyone asked, they should just say that they were going out to train. After thinking for a moment, Lu Ping gave them a few single-colored and two-colored restriction-breaking talismans and instructed them not to reveal these talismans in front of others. Then, he told them to find Dabeo and get a few suitable instruments to protect themselves. After sending the three of them off, Lu Ping thought for a moment and sent out a sound transmission sword. The next day, Du Jialua arrived at Huangli Island from Tianling Mountain. Ever since Lu Ping returned to Huangli Island, Du Jialua had come to visit Lu Ping several times. However, he didn't run into him even once. What he didn't know was that Lu Ping had already seen him in the Baiyang Tower. Disciple greets Uncle Master. Although Du Jialua was almost certain to become Lu Ping's disciple, Lu Ping had instructed him that he would only accept Du Jialua as a disciple after he had advanced to the core forging stage. Furthermore, Du Jialua was not allowed to reveal his relationship with Lu Ping. Thus, even though Du Jialua was already at the 8th layer of the blood condensation realm and was about to advance to the peak of the blood condensation realm, and his earth-based techniques were quite famous among the 4th-generation disciples, he still didn't formally acknowledge a master. He only trained with perfected master Lu Xianyuan. Lu Ping passed a jade scroll to Du Jialua. After thinking for a moment, he tossed a jade token to Du Jialua and said, "Go to Huanyu Island and find what's recorded on this jade token. After that, go to the crafting hall and look for Grandmaster Chen Lian. Give this jade token to him and he will know what to do." Du Jialua took the token and was about to leave and Lu Ping called him back and handed him an escape talisman weapon. "I've already filled this talisman weapon with inner yuan. When you're in danger, just activate it and cultivators below the Dharma manifestation stage won't be able to do anything to you. Use it well." Chapter 9:13. After Xiang Lu Laozu obtained the vast ocean bell, he hid his tracks and did not appear in the North Sea cultivation world. The sects Laozu all extended an olive branch to the independent mid-Dharma Laozu of the North Sea in view of the destructive power of the vast ocean bell against Mara. However, there was no response. At one point, Lu Ping wanted to use Ling Long to find the approximate location of Xiang Lu's old feet through the traces left in the earth veins by forefather Xiang Lu. But unfortunately, the mountain collapsed and the earth veins shifted. The entire Huanyu Island was in ruins, so even Ling Long herself couldn't find it. Seeing that the situation on Frost Island was becoming more and more tense, the sects all sent out messages, hoping that Xiang Lu Laozu would help the human cultivators defend against Mara's attack. When the news came, the entire North Sea cultivation world noticed the subtle changes. It seemed that if this Xiang Lu Laozu did not appear, not only would he offend the sects of the North Sea, he would also be placed on the opposite side by the entire North Sea cultivation world. After all, the calamity of Mara would sweep through the entire cultivation world. Every cultivator had the duty to fight against Mara. However, if Xiang Lu Laozu appeared, then it would be hard to say if he could continue to control the vast ocean bell under the pressure of the sections. Recently, another piece of news spread like wildfire. That was the Qiao family, one of the 12 families of the North Sea that had Dharma Laozu as their leader. Laozu was mistakenly killed by Tiankang Laozu during the battle for the vast ocean treasure. Without Dharma Laozu, the Qiao family was in a constant state of anxiety. There was news that Jinling and Xianling sect would work together to divide the Qiao family's share of spirit stones on Frost Island. However, neither Jinling nor Xianling sect's Dharma Laozu directly responded to this matter. It was as if the two sects did not know about this. However, this also made the other 11 forces feel relieved. They were afraid that the sects of the North Sea would plot against them for their share of spirit stones. These clans usually only had 1 or 2 Dharma adepts in their ranks. There was no way they could compete with the 9 great sects of the North Sea, which had at least a mid-Dharma adept in their ranks, like Laozu. Right now, the situation on Frost Island was growing more and more severe. It was obvious that even Mara had been attracted by the spirit stone mines on Frost Island. At that time, all the sects and families would definitely send out their elites to protect Frost Island. If the sects took the opportunity to plot against the Dharma idol Laozu of these families and forces, they would not be a match for him. Therefore, these 11 sects became more and more united. Fortunately, although there were rumors, the major sects never took any action against the Qiao family's share of spirit stones. This made the previous worries of the 11 forces gradually relax. The scale of Mara's attacks on Frost Island grew larger and more frequent. The entire North Sea was mobilizing their forces. Frost Island could be said to be the most important object in the entire North Sea cultivation world. It was also the first large-scale battle between the North Sea cultivation world and Mara. Jinling was also constantly making preparations. Naturally, Lu Ping was also called up. However, before he went to Frost Island, Fornax Laozu had already sent him a message, asking him to make a few batches of soul return pills. The soul return pill was a strange pill recipe that Lu Ping found in the Clear Stream cave abode. It could repair a cultivator's damaged divine consciousness. It was targeted at cultivators who had been seriously injured by the soul-devouring magic of the demonic cultivator. The main material to make the soul return pill was the soul-devouring crystal of the demonic cultivator. The grade of the soul return pill depended on the grade of the soul-devouring crystal of the great demonic cultivator. The soul return pill made from the soul-devouring crystal of the great demonic cultivator could heal cultivators who had been injured by the great demonic cultivator's soul-devouring crystal. The soul return pill made from the soul-devouring crystal of the blood demonic cultivator could also heal cultivators who had been injured by the blood demonic cultivator. By the time Lu Ping and Fornax Laozu had finished making a few batches of soul return pills, the battle on Frost Island was already in full swing. Both sides had suffered heavy casualties. On Jinling's side, even though spiritual master Xianchen was personally in charge of the mother-child traction formation, it was said that the number of core forging cultivators who had died during this period of time was in the double digits, not to mention the other sections. However, this was also because Jinling occupied the largest area on Frost Island, so the area he was defending was naturally the largest. Even though Jinling's current strength could be said to be the best in the cultivation world of the North Sea, he could only fight head-on like this. As time went on, the number of casualties would naturally increase. Other than those who had died, there were even more people who were injured. Fortunately, the entire pill pavilion was operating at full capacity during this period of time. With Lu Ping's help, Jinling's various healing pills were considered sufficient, reducing many of Jinling's losses. On this day, Lu Ping finally completed the mission that Fornax Laozu had given him. Thinking that he was going to Frost Island soon, he walked towards the artifact forging hall. After guiding the 9 mid-sized spirit veins over and merging them into the main vein of the spirit vein on Tianling Mountain, the concentration of spirit energy on the entire Tianling Mountain had obviously increased. Although Xinling had tried his best to slow down this process to avoid arousing too many people's suspicions, for someone like Lu Ping who had extremely long divine senses and was extremely sensitive to spirit energy, it was extremely clear. Chen Lian saw Lu Ping from afar and waved at him, saying, "You're here at just the right time. Saves me the trouble of looking for you." Lu Ping smiled, "Not bad, you've already advanced to the late stage of the core forging realm. It looks like becoming a Grandmaster Artificer won't be a problem." Chen Lian threw a psychic jade pendant to him and said, "Here, this is your jade pendant. I've already condensed 2 psychic spirit treasures on it, and it's almost reached the limit of this psychic jade pendant's quality. If you want to improve it further, I'm afraid you'll have to find better spirit materials." Lu Ping held the jade pendant in his hand and played with it. After hanging it on his waist, he could see through the 3 pure true pupils that the psychic jade pendant was filled with a misty light. Lu Ping took off the jade pendant again and said, "This jade pendant was given to me as a greeting gift by my senior sister when I became my disciple. Originally, I only wanted to refine a top-grade magic tool, but I happened to find some suitable spirit materials, so I upgraded it all the way until now." Chen Lian said, "Although this psychic jade pendant can be considered a rare and precious treasure, it has innate limitations. The amount of spirit energy it can gather is almost a hair from 9 oxen for you and me. For early-stage core forging realm cultivators, it has some use. However, if you can find 10 millennia spirit jade, you may be able to upgrade it to the level of a spirit-nurturing magic treasure. In that case, it may be of some use to cultivators like me. Moreover, after using the 10 millennia spirit jade to upgrade its quality, it may have the qualifications to challenge the Thunder Tribulation and become a spirit treasure in the future. How can 10 millennia spirit jade be so easy to find? That thing is not inferior to a high-grade heaven-ranked spirit treasure. With a piece of 10 millennia spirit jade, you can directly refine a spirit treasure. Why would you use it to upgrade this psychic jade pendant?" Lu Ping also had Linglong's wine cauldron in his hand. These things that were precious to others naturally didn't catch his eye. Under Chen Lian's surprised gaze, Lu Ping threw the jade pendant back to him and said, "You're right. This psychic jade pendant was originally not upgraded for me. In a few days, there might be a boy who will bring my jade pendant to you. At that time, you can give this jade pendant to him." Chen Lian said with a smile, "Oh, for it to be so important to you, could it be that you want to accept another disciple? But this jade pendant is just right for me." Lu Ping just nodded and didn't say anything. Instead, he handed a jade slip to Chen Lian and said, "Take a look at this first." Chen Lian took the jade slip doubtfully and checked its contents with his divine thoughts. After a while, he frowned and said, "Why do you want to refine this thing?" Back then, there were many people who wanted to refine this thing, but no one succeeded. Lu Ping asked straightforwardly, "Can you forge it?" Chen Lian pondered for a moment and said, "The refinement process of the vast ocean bell has almost been figured out by the cultivators back then. Naturally, it can be refined. However, after the refinement, it still doesn't have the special killing effect of the real vast ocean bell against demonic cultivators." Lu Ping asked seriously, "Have you really studied the sea bell thoroughly?" Of course, under Lu Ping's gaze, Chen Lian put away his confident expression and said, "After all, besides Canghai Laozu and now Xiang Lu Laozu, no one has personally touched this treasure." Lu Ping snorted and said, "Even if they touch the real thing, they might not be able to refine it." Chen Lian's eyes lit up and said, "Did you find something?" Lu Ping thought for a moment and said, "It's hard to say. Other than the kid who came to you with the jade token, there should be 3 more disciples coming to you. They will bring some spirit material ores with them. You can give them some rewards and then refine the spirit material ores and hand them over to me. Then, we'll try to refine the spirit material ores together. What if we succeed?" Chen Lian was obviously not very interested in the sea bell. Maybe it was because he didn't think he could successfully refine it. But after hearing Lu Ping mention refining spiritual material raw ores, he suddenly remembered something and said, "Speaking of refining raw ores, it reminds me that you have an extremely brilliant purification technique. Coincidentally, all the spiritual materials needed to upgrade your landslide have been prepared. All you need is to upgrade the quality of the magic treasure and condense the spirit-nurturing magic treasure. This is my first time trying to condense the spirit-nurturing magic treasure. Your purification technique will be very useful in upgrading landslide to a spirit-nurturing magic treasure." Lu Ping smiled and said, "You are grabbing a strong man. I still have a mission from the sect." Chen Lian smiled and said, "Isn't it just the matter of Frost Island? The sky is dark and the earth is dark. So many Dharma idol Laozu are biding their time there. Can one more person like you turn the situation around and return victorious? My matter is much more important than you going to Frost Island." Lu Ping thought about it and agreed. If Chen Lian could successfully upgrade this time, he would be Jinling's second Grandmaster Artificer after Tianjiang Laozu. The significance of this wasn't any less than that of a Grandmaster Alchemist in the Pill Pavilion. The sect had no reason to stop him. 3 months later, a dull bang came from the artifact forging hall. The ground shook violently and the entire artifact forging hall started to shake as if the entire artifact forging hall was about to collapse. Many alchemists ran out of the artifact forging hall and saw Tianjiang Laozu standing at the door of an artifact forging room in the distance. Just when everyone was confused, the door of the artifact forging room suddenly opened. A haggard-looking Lu Ping and a dirty-looking Chen Lian walked out one after another. However, they didn't hide the joy in their eyes. Chapter 9:14. The reason why Chen Lian could become one of the top genius artifact refiners in Jinling's artifact forging hall was not only due to his extraordinary talent in artifact forging and his family's heritage. Another important reason was that, compared to other artifact refiners, Chen Lian had many more items to practice with. Back then, Lu Ping had discovered a zong or mine within the green sea snake's lair. Chen Lian had dug out the entire zong or mine and refined it into the spiritual material, zong or, bit by bit. It was due to the several years of continuous refining that Chen Lian was able to lay down an extremely solid foundation in the path of artifact forging. After that, Chen Lian entered the artifact forging hall and was accepted as Sage Enigma Flame's disciple. By then, Lu Ping had already begun to manage Huangli Island. The cultivators who had returned from exploring overseas would bring various spiritual materials to Huangli Island to trade. There was no lack of high-quality items among them. Whenever Chen Lian needed those items, Lu Ping and Hu Lili would do everything in their power to obtain them for him. As the other artifact refiners were still hesitating about whether or not they should refine out a high-difficulty magic artifact, Chen Lian had already begun. As the other cultivators were regretting the loss of a great deal of spiritual materials due to a failure in the refinement of a magic treasure, Chen Lian had already destroyed 2 magic treasures. Additionally, he was in the process of refining a third. It would not be an exaggeration to say that the reason why Chen Lian's artifact forging skills could improve so quickly was partly due to his talent and partly due to the sufficient supply of spiritual materials. Outside the artifact forging hall, when Tianjiang Laozu saw the 2 of them coming out, he quickly stepped forward and said, "Take it out. Let the old man have a look." Chen Lian turned to look at Lu Ping. Seeing the anxious look on Tianjiang Laozu's face, Lu Ping hastily brought out landslide. At that moment, the silvery jade-colored print appeared even more solemn and quaint. The pair of ancient characters engraved at the bottom of the print exuded an immeasurable weight. The entire print appeared seamless. From afar, it looked as though a primordial beast was glaring at them. Good, good, good. Tianjiang Laozu looked at the spirit-nurturing magic treasure and said, "Good," 3 times in a row. Then, he turned to Chen Lian and asked, "Did you really condense the seals on it yourself?" Chen Lian was still a little reserved in front of his grand teacher, but Lu Ping wasn't so polite. He smiled and said, "Martial grand uncle, even if you ask me to condense a treasure, I don't know how to do it myself." The Sky River Patriarch nodded at Chen Lian and smiled, "Not bad, I have a successor." But when Sky River Ancestor returned landslide to Lu Ping, he suddenly asked, "The purification technique used to upgrade this mystic treasure is yours, right?" Lu Ping was stunned for a moment, but he knew that the old ancestor's eyes were sharp. He smiled and said, "That's right, it's a purification technique I learned before, but I used it on alchemy. This purification technique is extremely brilliant." Tianjiang Laozu took out a storage pouch and the water-controlling flag. It's not easy to repair the water-controlling flag. The difficulty lies in the fact that the water-controlling flag was created with the intention of being a spirit treasure. Therefore, its materials are extremely rare and hard to find. But that's no longer a problem. The storage pouch contains the materials needed to repair it. The biggest problem is that there is a secret technique used in the refining process of the water control flag, which can make the composition of the spiritual materials extremely pure. With the current means of the old man, it is not impossible to make it, but it will take too much time and energy. Now that you have this set of purification secret technique in your hand, cooperate with him again to repair the water control flag. After that, he turned around and left. Lu Ping looked at his back and suddenly noticed that Tianjiang Patriarch seemed to have relaxed, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. However, the Patriarch seemed to have aged even more, and his back view looked unusually bleak. Seeing that the Tianjiang Patriarch had gone far away, Chen Lian suddenly said, "The Tianjiang Patriarch once told me that he only had 2 wishes. The first was to refine a spirit treasure for the sect to pass on to the younger generation. The second was to nurture a weapon refining grandmaster to inherit the legacy of the weapon refining hall." Lu Ping laughed. Although ancestor Tianjiang didn't personally refine a spirit treasure, both the mountain-splitting axe and the wood in Uncle Jiang Tianlin's hands were repaired and modified by ancestor Tianjiang. This can be considered as fulfilling one of his long-cherished wishes. Now that you were able to condense the 7th restriction on the landslide, even though you borrowed my strength, you can barely be considered a master refiner. Ancestor Tianjiang's 2 wishes have been fulfilled. He should be happy for the rest of his life. Chen Lian nodded, yet his expression didn't turn for the better in the slightest. Instead, he seemed to be even more serious as he said, "Do you know why ancestor Tianjiang risked his life to repair the mountain-splitting axe and called me over to assist him?" Without waiting for Lu Ping to answer, Chen Lian continued, "It's not only because of his obsession and his long-cherished wish for the path of refining, but also because his lifespan is running out." Looking at Lu Ping's shocked expression, Chen Lian continued, "In fact, Grandmaster Ancestor didn't even need my help to repair the mountain-splitting axe. These few years, Grandmaster Ancestor only wanted to pass on his knowledge to me. He hoped that I could become a Grandmaster Artificer in his lifetime so that when his lifespan comes to an end, there would be someone to inherit the Pavilion of Smithing's legacy and bring it to greater heights." Chen Lian said apologetically, "Originally, I didn't have much confidence in making a spirit-nurturing treasure. I needed to slow down and accumulate some experience. However, I also wanted to become a master refiner as soon as possible so that Ancestor Tianjiang can fulfill his long-cherished wish. That's why I had to use landslide as a test subject." Lu Ping patted Chen Lian's shoulder emotionally and said, "There's no need to be so polite between us. Now that landslide has successfully condensed the 7th enchantment and upgraded it to a spirit-nurturing treasure, you are now a true Grandmaster craftsman. Senior Martial Uncle Tianjiang must be very happy, you should be happy." Chen Lian smiled bitterly. Lu Ping continued to ask, "Earlier, you said that Ancestor Tianjiang doesn't have much time left in his lifespan?" Chen Lian nodded and said in a low voice, "Although Ancestor Tianjiang entered the sect late and did not rank high among the first generation of practitioners, he matured slowly. Actually, his lifespan is second only to ancestor Tian Xiang and ancestor Tian Fan among the 6 Laozu of the first generation. He has long passed the threshold of 800 years old. Ancestor Tian Xiang suffered many injuries in his early years and has no hope of entering the mid-Dharma stage. I estimate his lifespan to be around 900 years old. Lu Ping nodded. Only now did he realize that although these younger disciples had their own achievements, after thinking about it carefully, he realized that they had always been under the protection of the first generation of practitioners. That was why they had been able to grow so fearlessly until now. But now, he suddenly realized that this layer of protection had actually been provided for them for a long time, to the point where it was on the verge of collapsing. At that moment, Lu Ping's mood became exceptionally heavy. He even seemed to be a little hesitant, not knowing what to do next. Tian Xiang, Tian Fan, and Tian Shui Laozu were still fine, but Tian Kang Laozu only had a few decades left in his lifespan. Tian Jiang Laozu probably had less than 100 years left. Although Tian Lu Laozu was slightly better off, he had probably passed the threshold of 700 years. Even if he could live 1,000 years, he would only have about 200 years left. Furthermore, although early Dharma adepts had a lifespan of 800 to 1,000 years, that 1,000 years was just an upper limit. Very few early Dharma adepts could actually reach this height. At this moment, Chen Lian pulled himself together and said, "Forget it, let's not talk about these heavy matters. Let's first see how to repair your water-controlling flag. This is the work of the Fei Ling sect's crafting grandmaster, Jiao Yuqiang." Even during the battle of the Fei Ling sect that year, Jiao Yuqiang used this water-controlling flag to defend himself against the combined attacks of 2 to 3 Dharma adepts. If I can repair it, I believe that my crafting skills will improve by leaps and bounds. Lu Ping laughed and said, "Don't you need to rest for a while? Upgrading landslide has already put so much effort into both of us." Chen Lian waved his hand and said, "I know a little about your level of cultivation. With just a few days, how could your inner yuan be depleted? Crafting weapons is not like making pills. You need to strike while the iron is hot." Lu Ping knew that Chen Lian was anxious, so he let him be. Fortunately, although the spiritual materials needed to repair the water-controlling flag were extremely rare, there were not many of them. The reason why it had not been repaired in the past few thousand years was because the crafting hall had never mastered an extremely advanced purification technique. In the blink of an eye, another half a year had passed. The battle on Frost Island had gradually escalated. Bloody Mara and the Dharma adepts frequently clashed. Even the Jinling sect was gradually filled with a somber atmosphere due to the increasing number of casualties. At this moment, in Lu Ping's hand, there was a small triangular flag that was only the size of a palm. Layers of black light hung down from the small flag. The damage on the flag had already been repaired. Now, the water-controlling flag was a true spiritual treasure. Chen Lian watched from the side as Lu Ping happily played with the water-controlling flag in his hand. He smiled and said, "The crafting of this water-controlling flag is really exquisite. This time, repairing the water-controlling flag will be a great help to my crafting skills." Lu Ping suddenly waved his hand and put away the water-controlling flag. He said seriously, "Do you want to learn the spirit fire smelting purification technique?" Chen Lian's eyes brightened, but then he smiled and said, "This is your trump card, right? Are you really willing to teach me?" Lu Ping chuckled and said, "This spirit fire smelting purification technique was originally a smithing technique, but I combined it with other alchemy techniques to form a new purification technique. If you can help me forge the ocean bell, I will teach you this secret technique." Chen Lian said without thinking, "It's a deal." But then Chen Lian said, "You must have some other plans, right?" Lu Ping chuckled and said, "That's right. You still need to forge a sword for me." "Sword? What sword?" Chen Lian was confused. Based on his understanding of Lu Ping, this would not be an easy task. But if it was just a flying sword, why was he so serious? A sword that you can only forge after you enter the Dharma stage. Chapter 9:15. Frost Island was still in the hands of the human cultivators. Even though the human cultivators were divided into different camps on Frost Island, Mara had always firmly controlled Frost Island under his continuous attacks. When Lu Ping arrived at Frost Island from the teleportation formation, he felt as if he had returned to the time when Frost Island had just discovered a large spirit stone mine. Cultivators from various sects swarmed over, and the entire Frost Island looked desolate. After so many years of management by the sects of the North Sea, the entire Frost Island had been built with countless beautiful pavilions and towers. Everywhere was covered with ice that shone under the sunlight. But now, when Lu Ping looked around, the entire Frost Island seemed to have returned to the past. The only difference was that the ground was not covered with snow and ice, but ice shards. The ice palaces and ice towers that had been built over decades had all turned into ruins in this battle. Even though Frost Island had not been breached by Mara, the aftershocks of the continuous battles still affected the island. The power of the island's protective formation was all directed to the outside. Without the protection of the formation, the ice sculptures all collapsed in the aftershocks of the battle. Outside the island came the sky-shaking rumbling sounds of spells, divine arts, and artifacts clashing. Lu Ping's divine sense spread out in all directions, and he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. It was said that although Frost Island had been holding its ground all this time, it was still unable to repel Mo Luo's attacks, and it even suffered heavy casualties. The main reason was because the sects on Frost Island were fighting on their own, and they never interacted with each other. It looked like they were absolutely right. At this time, battle cries shook the sky in the northwest direction. Even though there were aftershocks of battles coming from other directions, the intensity of the battles was not on the same level. Lu Ping stepped on a streak of light and arrived at the coast where Jinling was stationed in a moment. He saw that Jinling had sent out 20 to 30 core forging cultivators. They were surrounded by the protective formation of the mother and child traction formation and were attacking a dozen core forging Mara in the sky outside the island. On the surface of the sea, over 100 blood condensation disciples formed a dozen or so, 3 talents 5 elemental Dao soldier formation, and fought against a few hundred blood condensation minions. From afar, the battle looked intense. However, from Lu Ping's point of view, it seemed like Jinling was taking the opportunity to let his disciples practice the Dao soldier formation. Although both sides were still fighting to the death, it also seemed like a tacit understanding between Jinling and Mara's clan on the battlefield. Lu Ping didn't care too much. He jumped out of the island's protective array and rushed towards the dozens of core forging realm Big Mara in the sky outside the island's protective array. However, this time, Lu Ping was much more cautious. When his divine sense rushed out of Frost Island, he had already carefully checked the surrounding void. Other than the divine senses that Lao Tzu were familiar with, the Dharma plane blood Mara really didn't appear nearby. Lu Ping's sudden appearance not only surprised the dozens of Big Mara in the sky above Frost Island, but also surprised the Jinling cultivators. However, when the Jinling cultivators saw that the person who appeared was Lu Ping, their original reproachful expression instantly turned into joy. Many of the Jinling cultivators who were watching the battle on the island even cheered. At the moment when Lu Ping appeared, 2 blue rainbows shot out from his body. The Autumn Water Sword and the Yi-Ren Sword respectively killed 2 Azuras that were equivalent to early core forging cultivators. The 2 Azuras tried to dodge, but the flying spiral chain kill was famous for its speed and difficulty in dodging. It was a famous ambush sword art in the cultivation world, not to mention that they were only Azuras that were equivalent to early and middle core forging cultivators. Of the 2 Azuras, one was beheaded and the other was cut in half. They roared as they fell towards the sea, but Wang Qi immediately followed up and pierced through their skulls. A black ball suddenly exploded next to Lu Ping. A puff of black mist appeared, and countless sounds began to explode in Lu Ping's ears. Then, like needles, they stabbed towards Lu Ping's divine sense. Lu Ping snorted coldly and suddenly turned around to shout at the black mist, "Jia!" The black mist immediately exploded and dissipated like a balloon that had been inflated too much. A mournful roar suddenly sounded in the sky, as if someone was suffering great pain. However, after this roar, not only did the Jinling Corps forging cultivators in the sky slow down, but even the Jinling Dao soldier formation that was fighting against Mara in the blood condensation realm above the sea was affected. Immediately, a few disciples were injured by Mara. A green light flashed in Lu Ping's eyes, and the two swords suddenly shot out 1,000 feet to the right. With a twist and a twist, the mournful roar stopped abruptly. Severed limbs and a cloud of blood mist scattered in the air 1,000 feet away, and a head with blood flowing out from all 7 orifices fell into the sea, creating a huge splash. At that moment, a Azura suddenly appeared behind Lu Ping. With a sinister smile, it threw a huge machete at Lu Ping's back. Just as the machete was about to hit Lu Ping's back, the machete seemed to have sunk into layers of sponge. The force contained in the machete was being stripped away layer by layer. Seeing that the situation was not good, the Azura wanted to withdraw the machete and retreat. Unexpectedly, when it pulled back, it found that transparent threads had already wrapped around the machete. The Azura shook with all its might, trying to disintegrate the transparent threads on the surface of the machete. However, the speed at which the threads wrapped around the machete was much faster than the speed at which it disintegrated. At that moment, the Azura realized that the transparent threads were actually tiny water lines. The machete had already been wrapped so tightly that only an outline was left. The Azura's sneak attack happened in the blink of an eye. When Lu Ping turned around, the Azura was so shocked that it did not even have time to withdraw its accompanying machete. It rolled up a gust of wind and was about to retreat. However, Lu Ping suddenly reached out and clenched his fist. The water vapor around him quickly condensed into a huge palm, holding the gust of wind tightly in his hand. The Shura's terrified roar came from the palm. Water splashed out from the palm as the Shura struggled, but it could not break free from the palm's restraint. Lu Ping clenched his fist, and so did the giant water vapor hand. More and more Jinling disciples who came to watch the battle suddenly found that the giant water vapor hand seemed to have shrunk a little. Then, the palm opened, and everyone saw that the wind Azura was covered in water droplets from the inside out. It fell straight down to the surface of the sea. In just a moment, the wind Azura, which was equivalent to a late-stage core forging cultivator, had become a corpse filled with water. The Jinling cultivators watching from below were dumbfounded. In the blink of an eye, 4 large Mara Azuras were killed one after another. The Jinling cultivators watching the battle were filled with excitement, and the Jinling cultivators who participated in the battle were also greatly boosted. On the other hand, the group of Azuras were in chaos. Some continued to charge forward bravely, while others began to flee. The Jinling cultivators took the opportunity to attack and surround the Azuras. However, Lu Ping was hovering in the air and did not attack anymore. Instead, he watched as the cultivators of his sect began to chase and kill the fleeing Mara clan. The Jinling cultivators did not chase very far. Soon, snowflakes exploded in the sky, and the Jinling cultivators returned. Seeing this, Lu Ping also returned to Frost Island. At the same time, Lu Ping also noticed that the aftermath of the battle from the northwest of Frost Island seemed to have stopped. Either Mara had stopped attacking, or Xian Ling's sect, which was defending the northwest, had repelled Mara's attack. Without exchanging greetings with the many Jinling disciples, Tian Shui Laozu's voice was already roaring in Lu Ping's ears, "Brat, hurry up and get over here." Lu Ping cupped his hands apologetically to his fellow disciples, and hurried towards the temporary palace. Although many of the ice sculptures on Frost Island had collapsed, the temporary palace was still the place where the Jinling Laozu rested. Naturally, it would not collapse from the aftermath of the battle. In the temporary palace, the 2 Laozu, Tian Fan and Tian Shui, took the first seats. Tian Fan Laozu had been operating in the East Sea for more than 20 years. After the crisis on Frost Island, Jiang Tianlin Laozu went to Jingzha Island to replace him. Tian Fan Laozu and Tian Shui Laozu were gathered on Frost Island. This was equivalent to a Dharma adept, and it could be seen how much importance Xinling placed on Frost Island. Under the two Laozu were Guo Tianshan Laozu, Chu Xuanqing Laozu, and Yuan Xianshu Laozu. Xinling had unknowingly set up 5 Dharma adepts on Frost Island. Lu Ping was greatly shocked. He did not know why Xinling would set up such a force in such a secretive manner, but it had never appeared on Frost Island before. Could it be that they had really come for the Spirit Stone Mine on Frost Island? Or perhaps the disaster of Mara this time had really reached such a serious stage. Below them were Spiritual Master Xian Chen and Spiritual Master Xian Sr. Do you know how much blood Mara was paying attention to you at that time? Tian Shui Laozu's face was as cold as frost. When he saw Lu Ping enter the palace, he immediately yelled harshly. Lu Ping knew that his appearance just now had almost ruined something. In reality, he had already realized something after killing 4 Mara in a row. That was why he did not participate in the encirclement against Mara. He hurriedly smiled and said, "This disciple greets Laozu and senior ants." Seeing that no one paid attention to him, he smiled and said, "This disciple had just arrived here and saw that my sect's disciples were fighting against Mara. That was why I lent a helping hand. I did not think that I would attract 3 blood Mara Laozu to watch from the shadows. I am ashamed." At this time, Tian Fan Laozu opened his eyes and said, "There is also a Jade Azura." When Lu Ping heard this, he was shocked and said, "Even a Jade Azura appeared." Then, he thought of something and looked at the 5 Laozu. He suddenly said, "No wonder 5 Laozu came all at once." Even Senior Ant Master Tian Fan rushed back from the East Sea. Tian Fan Laozu smiled and shook his head, saying, "5? It's 6. When Lu Ping heard this, he was stunned. Before he could carefully ponder what Tian Fan Laozu meant, he heard Tian Shui Laozu say coldly, "Even now, you still think that you are a core forging disciple? 3rd generation minor repairs. You are looking down on yourself too much." Lu Ping didn't say anything. At this time, he could only listen and learn. Otherwise, the furious Tian Shui Laozu would think of other ways to punish Lu Ping. Back then, Jiang Tianlin Laozu and Lu Tianling Laozu had suffered a lot in her hands. Only Tian Qin Laozu was favored by her. Lu Ping knew that he didn't have Tian Qin Laozu's ability. At this time, Guo Tianshan Laozu suddenly said, "Junior nephew Lu has just arrived at Frost Island. Perhaps you don't know the situation yet, so it's hard to avoid mistakes. Although we have exposed a lot of our strength, at least we have forced out a Jade Azura. It can be said that there are gains and losses." Among Xinling's 2nd generation disciples, other than Tian Qin Laozu, only Tian Shan Laozu, this kind and honest person, had not been trained by Tian Shui Laozu. Tian Shui Laozu still gave him some face and didn't give Lu Ping a hard time. Chapter 9:16. In the world of practitioners, Mara, who was equivalent to the blood condensation stage, was called Little Mara, while those in the core forging stage were naturally called Big Mara. As for those in the Dharma Mara, there were some changes. Due to the existence of spiritual treasures, they were classified more carefully. When Mara had just become a blood Mara, his cultivation level was equivalent to that of an early Dharma adept. However, because Mara usually had spiritual treasures accompanying him, almost every Mara's strength was above that of an early Dharma adept. Normally, only mid-Dharma adepts would be able to deal with them. However, after Mara had become a blood Azura, there was still a way for him to improve. Above Mara, there was still the Jade Mara. This kind of cultivation level was equivalent to that of a mid-Dharma adept, but its strength was close to that of a late Dharma adept. Perhaps only Tian Shui Laozu and Tian Fan Laozu together could deal with it. And above the Jade Mara, there was another kind of Mara. This kind of Mara was something that even great adepts would have to avoid. This kind of Mara was someone who dared to fight against the pure young Laozu. After Tian Shui Laozu heard Tian Fan Laozu's words, she just glared at Lu Ping. The two did not speak. However, some things had to be made clear, so Tian Fan Laozu spoke at this time. Times are different now. Your identity has changed since you defeated Tian Shu and killed the Golden Jiao Island Lord's spiritual companion. You are no longer the water sword deity, but more importantly, you are an expert who is no weaker than the Dharma adept Laozu. You are someone who can control the fate of the sect. Your every word and action can even be used to represent the whole of Jinling. Lu Ping was dumbfounded by Tian Fan Laozu's words. He could not be bothered to admire Tian Shu Laozu's embarrassed and angry expression. He said, "Grand Uncle Master, your disciple does not dare to accept your words." Chu Tiancheng Laozu, who was standing at the side, started laughing. Tian Shui Laozu glared at him fiercely. Chu Tiancheng Laozu immediately put on a straight face and said, "This is not a question of whether you are qualified or not. It is a fact that others will see it this way. Although you are not a Dharma adept, you have the strength of a Dharma adept. Naturally, others will see you as the 14th Dharma adept of our sect." Chu Tiancheng Laozu paused for a while, as if recalling the incident where he avoided the battle and went to the Central Plains. His tone softened and he said, "Anyway, it is the same for the Shura. With your strength participating in the battle just now, in Mara's eyes, it is us humans who broke the rules first. If their blood demons or even the Jade Shura were to attack our low-level cultivators, what would happen then?" It was not that Lu Ping did not realize the problem that Chu Tiancheng Laozu mentioned. In fact, it was precisely because he realized it that he purposely used his own cultivation as a cover to make Mara suffer a loss. However, he did not expect that Mara was also a spirit of the world and a bloodthirsty demon who was not afraid of death. Previously, it was only due to the fact that both sides were of equal strength and had a tacit understanding during the battle. If Lu Ping really acted presumptuously, these blood demons would naturally not be stingy with their attacks. At that time, the ones who would suffer a loss would most likely be Lu Ping himself and many low-level cultivators who were Jinling. The Battle of Frost Island became more and more tragic as the stalemate between Mara and the human race became more and more intense. However, because all the sects in the North Sea were sweeping away the snow in front of their door, the human cultivators were unable to accumulate enough strength to fight against Mara. This allowed Mara to choose a place outside of Frost Island to concentrate his advantage and attack at will. The sects that were attacked by Mara were in danger and suffered heavy casualties. At the beginning of the Battle of Frost Island, because Jinling occupied the largest area on Frost Island, the area it defended was naturally also the largest. Therefore, it faced the most sneak attacks from Mara. However, after more than 100 years of accumulation, the second-generation disciples of Jinling were in their prime, the third-generation disciples were already catching up, and even the fourth-generation disciples were beginning to show their talents. The strength of the sect was already something that the other sects in the North Sea could not hope to match. Therefore, Jinling gathered a total of about 100 core forging cultivators on Frost Island in one go. This was almost a third of the total number of core forging cultivators in Jinling. Among these hundreds of core forging cultivators, the second-generation disciples were the elites. Most of them were in the middle and late stages of core forging. The third-generation disciples were the main force. Most of them were in the middle and early stages of core forging. There were also some powerful disciples like Du Feng, Zhang Xianbei, and spiritual master Xuanyu who had entered the late stage of core forging. As for the fourth-generation disciples, they had just matured and were mostly in the first and second levels of core forging. With such a powerful group of cultivators, the 3 talents 5 elements Dao soldier formation, formed by almost 1,000 blood condensation disciples, and the support of the nearby Jade Sword sect, Chong Ming sect, and Water Mist Pavilion, Jinling was able to give Mara a powerful counterattack every time he was attacked. As time went by, these Mara gradually realized that there were a few areas on Frost Island that were quite strong. Every time Mara attacked Frost Island, he would suffer heavy casualties. Based on their instincts, these evil Luos had consciously avoided the few areas where the Zhenling sect was the strongest when they attacked the Huangli Island's Grand Formation. Therefore, in the end, even though Zhenling sect's area of defense was the largest, they had suffered the least losses. After Mara chose a place to attack Huangli Island, he would often carry out feint attacks in other areas. This was to prevent the cultivators in these areas from reinforcing the main area. The sect that was attacked would be more than happy to use this excuse to preserve their strength. Or, like Zhenling today, they would seize the time to practice their sect's Dao soldier formation and increase their disciples' combat experience. Helplessly, Lu Ping had no choice but to retract his sharpness and observe the battle between his disciples and Mo Luo with a lofty attitude. He even watched silently as his disciples died in battle, unable to save them in time. Ants, those below the Dharma stage were ants. This was also why, although the cultivation world divided the various forces into different levels, the minimum qualification was a Dharma stage cultivator, Laozu. If there was no Dharma stage cultivator, even if a force had tens or hundreds of core forging stage cultivators, in the eyes of the cultivation world, it would still be considered a weak force. It was not worthy of being called a noble. What a Dharma stage cultivator could represent was a kind of inheritance. Fortunately, there was still Lu Ping's eldest disciple on Frost Island who was constantly fighting outside. Wang Qi's sword skills had improved by leaps and bounds after advancing to the core forging stage. With Lu Ping's guidance, Wang Qi's improvement was even more solid and reliable. After a long time, Lu Ping realized that Zhenling had never used his full strength during Mara's previous attacks. Even during the early stages of Mara's attack on Frost Island, even though Zhenling had been in an extremely passive position, the Zhenling disciples on Frost Island still used the tactic of taking turns to defend against Mara's attacks. They had never thought of defeating Mara in one go. Ever since he was reprimanded by Tian Fan and Tian Shui, Lu Ping wandered around the Frost Island controlled by Zhenling as if he had nothing to do. However, this also made many of Zhenling's fourth-generation disciples very excited. Every day, other than Wang Qi coming to learn sword skills and cultivation, there were also many disciples who came because of Lu Ping's reputation. Lu Ping did not reject any of them and gave them advice one by one. In the end, after every battle, Lu Ping even started to comment on the process of the battle from the ice platform. Not only did many fourth-generation disciples come to listen, even the third-generation disciples would lower their statuses and come to listen. There were even many disciples from other sects who came because of Lu Ping's reputation. After all, what Lu Ping was talking about were things that could save one's life. They were real combat experiences and not just empty words. His cultivation base, his position, and everything he had seen and heard meant that he was destined to have insights that far surpassed the others. He was able to make incisive analyses. No one would refuse to live with their own life. This process was also a kind of accumulation of knowledge for Lu Ping. The two great arts that he relied on to cultivate, whether it was 100 rivers flow into the sea or blue sea's mulberry fields, both were a way to gather tens of thousands of arts. Whether it was 10,000 arts returned to one or 10,000 swords returned to origin, they all needed a cultivator's accumulation, and this accumulation came from the present. Amidst the purple mist, the two huge talismans shone brightly. The talismans that had already been formed a long time ago were filled with many more runes, filling up the two talismans even more. It was only at this time that Lu Ping realized that these two most important art talismans were like a framework that had already been built, or a skeleton that had already been erected. They were far from being completed, and there were still countless flesh and blood that needed to be filled in, just like the runes that were continuously being formed. Only after crossing the pass would one know that the pass was not the end. The strange dragon in the Golden Dan had been entrenched in Lu Ping's unbelievably huge 9-vein Golden Dan ever since it was formed, motionless as if it was waiting for the moment to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. However, just as the 2 runes that revolved around the Golden Dan began to grow more and more plentiful, the giant dragon suddenly seemed to have turned into a taotai that was looking for delicious food but could not obtain it. The huge body that was originally entrenched began to wander around the Golden Dan, as if it was looking for a loophole in the Golden Dan, so that it could break this cage and rush out from inside. However, how could this 9th-grade Golden Dan be so easily broken? After the giant dragon searched up and down without any results, it really became furious, especially the 2 magic talismans. The runes inside grew thicker and thicker, like 2 ripe fruits that were getting closer and closer to the Golden Dan. The attraction towards the strange dragon that was imprisoned in the Golden Dan was also getting stronger and stronger. The delicious food was right in front of it, but it could not be obtained. The increasingly irritable giant dragon finally could not contain its soaring anger, and fiercely slammed into the golden cage. Boom! Lu Ping, who was talking incessantly on the ice stage, was suddenly startled. Then, under the puzzled gazes of many cultivators below the stage, he smiled and said, "That's all for today. Everyone, please disperse." After saying that, he directly closed his eyes and did not speak another word. At the same time, all the Laozu on Frost Island felt alarmed. Every one of them seemed to have heard the roar that came from the depths of their divine thoughts, but also from the Dharma figure. At this moment, every Laozu put down what they were doing and extended their gazes and divine thoughts in the direction of Lu Ping. The sound of the Golden Dan was a sign of attaining the Dharma figure. They just didn't know who this person was, and what grade of the Golden Dan was. Chapter 9:17. The sound of the golden core drum was a phenomenon that could only occur for practitioners who had reached the 7th grade golden core stage and above before they entered the Dharma stage. The appearance of this phenomenon often indicated the vitality of the Dharma power that was being nurtured in the golden core. Practitioners at the peak of the core forging stage who could produce the sound of the golden core drum had a much higher chance of reaching the Dharma stage than those who had never produced the sound of the golden core drum. Lu Ping's divine will appeared in the core space, and he quickly discovered the changes in the golden core purple aura. The 2 full spells seemed to be deliberately luring the strange dragon, circling around the golden core and constantly provoking the anger of the strange dragon that had been imprisoned by the golden core. And at the edge of the golden core purple aura, the few spells that Lu Ping had condensed seemed to have been pushed to the edge again, as if they had been pushed to the edge by the churning purple aura when the strange dragon had first collided with the barrier of the golden core. At this moment, Lu Ping's divine will sensed something again. From a direction that he had not passed through, there were several divine wills that were rushing towards Lu Ping. Lu Ping snorted coldly, and a huge wave of divine will surged out. Very quickly, he set up a huge divine will barrier around himself, covering Lu Ping completely to prevent himself from being disturbed. It seemed that because of the sound of the golden core drum, although these divine wills had sensed that they had already entered the area where Jinling was, a core forging stage practitioner would not attract too much attention. One of the divine wills, which was obviously an early Dharma adept, unscrupulously crashed into the divine will barrier that Lu Ping had set up. Then, all the divine wills that were trying to penetrate the divine will barrier to find out the identity of the golden core drum cultivator stopped. This was because the scene in front of them made the divine wills of many Dharma adepts shudder. Jinling's rise was too fast, so fast that all the sects in the North Sea were caught unprepared. Now, another Jinling's peak core forging stage cultivator was showing signs of a golden core drumming. This was the final sign of attaining the Dharma stage. How could this not make Laozu, the Dharma adepts of the various sects, jealous? Therefore, after realizing that the golden core drum sound cultivator came from Jinling, many Dharma idol Laozu tried to disturb the Jinling cultivator through their spiritual sense with hostility. At the very least, they could not let the cultivator smoothly accept the benefits brought by the golden core drum sound. However, this rash early Dharma adept had no idea that he had kicked an iron plate with his foot. When this Dharma adept crashed into Lu Ping's divine will barrier, it was as if he had suddenly plunged into a whirlpool of water. Countless swirling currents instantly caused his divine will to lose all ability to detect anything. However, this Dharma adept's divine will was also very condensed. Very quickly, in this extremely uncomfortable atmosphere, he detected a golden light hidden in the whirlpool of divine will. The Dharma adept was overjoyed. Suppressing the nauseating feeling of dizziness, he crashed into the golden light. However, immediately after that, an extremely tragic howl came from the divine will, scaring all the other divine wills into silence and waiting to see what would happen next. The divine will finally struggled out of the golden light. The few divine wills nearby were instantly shocked. This divine will looked like it had obviously been torn off by someone, and it looked extremely weak. The divine will was filled with hatred, but more than that, it was filled with fear. Seeing this divine will retreat in a panic, the few divine wills nearby hesitated for a moment. However, very quickly, an existence that was obviously stronger than the others had already crashed into Lu Ping once again. A mid-Dharma adept. However, this was different from the previous divine will that had deliberately tried to destroy Lu Ping's purpose of training. When this divine will crashed into Lu Ping, it conveyed a desire to spar. However, it did not wait for Lu Ping's reply before it had already entangled with Lu Ping's divine will. Lu Ping thought for a moment and put away the meteoric poison power shield that he had refined as he pleased. Instead, he took out another item from his storage instrument and prepared to give this person a vicious blow. However, when he thought about how this item had once fiercely offended the Shanghai sects Dongji and Dongyi Laozu at the Phantom City auction, and how it could be restored after being corroded by the meteoric poison power shield, this item was far too vicious. Furthermore, it was entangled with a large family in the Central Plains. In the end, Lu Ping finally took it back. Forget it, I'll just fight with you for a while. I'm not necessarily afraid of you. Lu Ping's divine will instantly turned into a deep pool, and the divine will that was challenging him jumped into the pool without hesitation. Both sides were instantly entangled. Although Lu Ping was at a disadvantage in the beginning, he soon managed to fend off the onslaught and slowly rebuild his defense. Although he defended more than he attacked, every time he launched an attack, he had no choice but to force the enemy to withdraw their defenses. Both sides actually entered a stalemate in an instant. At this point, even if Lu Ping still did not reveal his identity, the divine wills of the Dharma adepts wandering in the void would definitely know. In the entire Zhenling sect, only Lu Xianping would be able to pull off something like this. However, these divine wills did not retreat, especially when they saw that Lu Ping was actually able to fight evenly with Hai Hun Laozu of the Hai Yan sect. This surprised many Laozu and made them look forward to the final result. In the Ice Palace, Tian Shui Laozu's face was full of anger. She said, "This is really outrageous." That Wang Shiqing did not know the inside story and was secretly taken advantage of by Lu Ping. He deserves it. This might be the Shanghai sect's intention. Looks like after the matter of Frost Island is over, we really have to teach the Shanghai sect a lesson. But where did Hai Hun get the guts to do this? Does he think I don't exist? How dare he treat our sect's disciple like this? Tianqing Laozu said anxiously, "Then what should we do? Are we going to let Hai Hun Laozu tangle with Martial Nephew Lu like this?" It seems that although Martial Nephew Lu has a tight defense, Hai Hun Laozu is also a cultivator of the same generation as the two martial uncles. As time goes on, Martial Nephew Lu will inevitably be at a disadvantage. Tian Fan Laozu shook his head and said, "The Hai Yan sect doesn't have the guts to hurt our sect's disciple. This is the other sects testing our strength. It is also an unintentional but spontaneous special alliance to contain our sect. The purpose is to see how much strength our sect has hidden on Frost Island. To be more precise, they are coming for me." Before Tianqing Laozu could say anything, Tian Fan Laozu had already ordered, "Junior sister, you, martial nephew Tian Shan, and Tian Shu should show our sex attitude first. If other sects continue to test us, junior brother Tian Cheng can just rush up and fight. Just make the situation chaotic. Hearing that, Patriarch Heavenly Snow and Patriarch Tian Shan and Patriarch Tian Shu nodded. Closing their eyes, they sat down cross-legged within the ice palace, not saying anything else. A powerful divine sense surged out from the ice palace, causing a whistling sound to ring through the world. Tian Cheng Laozu looked at Tian Fan Laozu with a puzzled look and said, "Martial uncle, when I go out and fight, if I cause a divine sense battle, what should we do?" The fan in Tian Fan Laozu's hand opened with a swoosh sound, and the air in the entire ice palace seemed to start moving. He said, "Then we might have to teach these people a lesson." The battle between Lu Ping and Hai Hun Laozu had definitely shocked all the Dharma adepts watching, including the few Dharma adepts from Jinling's own family. It was true that Lu Ping's strength was comparable to an early Dharma adept, but when they saw that Lu Ping's divine sense could even compete with a mid-Dharma adept, Lu Ping's behavior of challenging the limits of the Dharma adepts of the North Sea was enough to make many Dharma adepts have dark thoughts. Two Dharma adepts' divine senses rushed out from the spectating divine senses, actually trying to attack Lu Ping together with Hai Hun Laozu. Just as the two divine senses were about to clash with Lu Ping's and Hai Hun Laozu's divine senses, three divine senses pressed down on the battlefield. It was true that Tian Shui and Tian Shu Laozu were not the only ones in Jinling. Guo Tianshan had actually arrived at some point in time. A few of the divine senses saw the aggressive Jinling adepts and quickly retreated. However, many divine senses were still patrolling the area. The two divine senses that suddenly interfered were initially aiming to heavily injure Lu Ping. However, when they sensed the arrival of Tian Shui Laozu, Tian Shan, and Tian Shu Laozu, it was obvious that they had the intention to retreat. In reality, when these two divine senses interfered in the battle between Lu Ping and Hai Hun Laozu already had the intention to retreat. However, because the battle of divine senses was not ordinary, it was not something that could be achieved in a short period of time. Otherwise, he would have to give up part of his divine senses when he retreated. And these two divine senses obviously did not want Hai Hun Laozu to retreat just like that. Hence, in an instant, the situation of 3 against 1 really began to play out in front of Tian Shui Laozu and the other two. Tian Shui Laozu's divine sense was immediately displayed by many cultivators' divine senses. Everyone could imagine how furious Tian Shui Laozu was right now. However, the three of them did not dare to participate in the battle of divine senses between Lu Ping and Hai Hun Laozu. The entanglement of divine senses was actually far more dangerous than a battle of techniques. If Tian Shui Laozu and the others were to hastily join in, not only would they lose the deterrence of Laozu's divine senses, it would also cause Lu Ping to face an even more dangerous situation. Of course, more importantly, because of the three of them joining in, it caused Lu Ping's divine sense to be on the brink of collapse. However, now, even though Lu Ping appeared to be on the brink of collapse, he was like an unkillable cockroach, lingering on the brink of collapse without falling. On the contrary, including Hai Hun Laozu, the three divine senses were getting more and more fearful. Only when they personally fought with Lu Ping's divine sense did they realize the tenacity and condensation hidden within Lu Ping's divine sense. This kind of divine sense was able to increase so quickly, yet it did not affect his cultivation at all. Just thinking about it, the three of them felt that it was inconceivable. Hai Hun Laozu's divine sense finally broke free from the entanglement between the four of them. He did not even bid farewell to Tian Shui Laozu and the others' divine senses before hurriedly retreating. Fortunately, although Hai Hun Laozu's battle with Lu Ping was domineering, he did not lose the demeanor of an elder. Moreover, when the two divine senses attacked, he also maintained sufficient vigilance and did not take the opportunity to hit them when they were down. Therefore, although Tian Shui Laozu was extremely angry, she did not stop Hai Hun Laozu's divine sense from leaving. Without Hai Han Laozu's entanglement, the two early Dharma adepts' divine senses that were fighting with Lu Ping's divine sense were instantly thrown into chaos. They wanted to retreat, but they were afraid that Tian Shui Laozu and the others would intercept them midway. Thus, they could only brace themselves and continue to fight with Lu Ping. At this moment, the news of an enemy attack suddenly came from Frost Island. The entire Frost Island was immediately put on lockdown, and all the Dharma adepts' divine senses began to withdraw. Lu Ping ultimately still considered the bigger picture and did not make things difficult for the two of them. Gradually, he began to take a defensive stance. The two divine senses immediately felt as if they had been pardoned, and quickly retreated back to their respective areas. As for Tian Shui Laozu, although she was extremely unwilling, she was after all the first-generation Dharma adept of the North Sea, Laozu. She understood the importance of the matter and did not purposely make things difficult for them. However, just as the two divine senses were secretly delighted and were about to retreat, a scorching hot divine sense suddenly attacked with unparalleled anger. The scorching pain instantly burned a part of the two Laozu's divine senses into ashes. On the other side of Frost Island, dozens of miles away, two miserable cries came one after another. Lu Ping kept the small banner in his hand. His pale face showed that Lu Ping was currently in a very bad state. However, when he opened his eyes, a flash of joy flashed in his eyes, but it was hard to tell what he was thinking. At this moment, Lu Ping had already sensed that the divine senses of Tian Shui Laozu and the others had already left. Lu Ping's heart suddenly jumped. Only then did he realize that this time, Mara's attack was no small matter. Otherwise, it would not have attracted the attention of all the Dharma adepts at once. Could it be that this time, it would be another all-out attack by the Mara clan? Lu Ping hurriedly stood up. However, the dizziness in his head caused Lu Ping to almost fall down again. With great difficulty, he used the inner yuan in his body to stabilize his staggering body. Within the golden elixir, the dispirited strange dragon opened its huge mouth and sucked in fiercely. The Danxia purple qi in the core space quickly circulated and gathered towards the golden elixir. Then, it seeped into the golden elixir, as if it was swallowed by the strange dragon. With the nourishment and recovery of the inner yuan, although Lu Ping's divine sense was unable to completely recover in a short period of time, at least his pale face had a tinge of red. He was able to control his inner yuan and use flying techniques. After entering the ice palace, only then did Lu Ping realize that the few Laozus seemed to have disappeared. Lu Ping also knew that every time Zhenling and Mara fought, one or more of the few Laozus would be hidden at the side. One reason was to secretly protect their own disciples, and the other was to monitor Mara's side. However, the auras of the few Laozus in the ice palace had already disappeared. Obviously, they had all arrived near the coast of Frost Island. This also meant that this time, Mara's momentum was fierce. He was probably going to launch an all-out attack on the entire Frost Island, and the situation was extremely bad. At this time, Lu Ping couldn't care too much about this. Without the support of abundant soul power, Lu Ping could only use half of his strength. Randomly finding a secret room, Lu Ping lit a piece of soul-calming incense that hadn't completely burned out. Then, he stuffed a soul-returning pill made from the soul-devouring crystal of a great devil cultivator into his mouth. A small banner slowly rose from behind Lu Ping, and a strange ripple immediately started reverberating in the secret room. Chapter 9:18. Guo Tianshan Laozu looked worriedly at Mara's army that had almost completely covered the sea in front of them. Tian Shu Laozu suddenly appeared beside Guo Tianshan and said, "Junior brother Guo, did you find out how many blood Mara are hiding among them?" Guo Tianshan Laozu's expression was rather ugly as he said, "I only found traces of an ice shura." "But senior brother, did you notice that the number of demonic cultivators in Mara's army is much lower than before?" Tian Shu Laozu looked at the approaching Mara's army and could not help but look ugly as well. He said, "If that's the case, could it be that Mara is also plotting something?" But I did find traces of a wood elemental blood shura just now. That's quite rare. Guo Tianshan Laozu's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. He said, could it be that one of the shura's lairs is on an island covered with forests? To be able to raise a wood elemental shura to the Dharma plane, the island where the lairs are located must be very large. A wave of heat swept past. Guo Tianshan Laozu and Tianshu Laozu looked behind them. Tianqing Laozu just happened to appear in front of them and said, 2 water, 1 wind, 1 wood, 4 blood shuras. Other than that, there's also a hidden blood demon. It's a setup to counter the strength of our sect that was exposed on Frost Island. This Mara has become a fucking demon. Although Ancestor Tiancheng practiced a cultivation method of the fire property, he had learned a secret skill after he was ambushed by the demon clan and almost lost his life. This kind of detection secret skill was very effective in cracking the divine sense of concealment of practitioners at the same level. Although the All-Devil clan was also proficient in the secret skill of concealment, Ancestor Tiancheng was still very sure that he could detect the traces of their activities. Tianshu Laozu was a meticulous person. He carefully pondered the results of Tianqing Laozu's investigation and said, I'm afraid it's not that simple. These blood Mara are only targeting the 3 of us, Senior Aunt Tian Shui, and Junior Nephew Lu. Senior Aunt Tian Shui can handle 2 blood Mara each, and we can handle 1 each. However, there are 2 problems. Tianqing Laozu did not understand immediately and said, what problems? Tianshu Laozu sighed and said, the first problem is that in a one-on-one situation, the few of us will not be able to handle a blood Mara who has a primordial spiritual treasure. Tianshu Laozu paused and said, at least the old man will not be a match for any blood Mara. Tianqing Laozu's face turned a little ugly. It was not because of Tianshu Laozu, but because even though he was stronger than Tianshu Laozu, he might not be a match for a blood demon or a blood shura. Guo Tianshan Laozu thought for a while and said, with junior sister Xuanqin's guiding formation, it's not impossible. The old man thinks he can handle a blood shura. Guo Tianshan Laozu's own strength was not bad, and he had also practiced an earth-based technique that was good at defense. If he only defended and did not attack, even a mid-Dharma adept might not be able to break through his defense. As for Junior Nephew Lu, this kid has too many tricks up his sleeves. We don't have to worry about him. The old man has more confidence in him than he does in himself. Tianqing Laozu snorted twice and said in an annoyed tone. It's just that Junior Nephew Lu will need some time to recover from the chaotic battle of wills just now. Tianshu Laozu was still a little worried. Guo Tianshan Laozu said, let's wait for him for a while. Junior Nephew Lu is not someone who does not see the big picture. Moreover, blood Mara will not fight immediately, so we can drag it out. Tianqing Laozu said nonchalantly, Senior Uncle Tianfan has not been exposed yet. Once Senior Uncle Tianfan and the Wind and Snow Immortals work together, they can even handle a Jade Shura. Tianshu Laozu said helplessly, this is the second thing I wanted to talk about. That day, Senior Uncle Tianfan found a Jade Shura. Once it appears, no one on Frost Island other than Master and Senior Uncle Tian Shui will be able to stop it. Once the 2 of them work together to fight the Jade Shura, we will not be able to stop the blood Mara even with the power of the formation. Tianshu Laozu's words stunned Tianshan and Tianqing Laozu for a moment. They had really forgotten about these things. Tianqing Laozu's expression did not look good either. He said, then what should we do? Ask for help from the sect, or warn the other sects? Maybe this time, it's just that the number of Mara stationed here is a little more, and the other sects do not have this much pressure. Tianshan Laozu signaled Tianqing Laozu to stay calm, but he still said, this time, if we want to defend Frost Island, we must ask for reinforcements from other sections. Don't forget me, when Hai Hun Laozu and Junior Nephew Lu were fighting, there were 2 Dharma adepts from the Central Plains who were injured by junior brother Tiancheng. Their strength will definitely decrease. But don't worry, Senior Uncle Tian Fan and Senior Uncle Tian Shui must have noticed the abnormality, and they probably have a plan to deal with it. Only now did Tian Cheng Laozu and Tian Shu Laozu realize that Tian Fan and Tian Shui Laozu had not appeared since the beginning. In the secret room, Lu Ping suddenly opened his eyes. The space in front of him rippled, and a palm-sized hole appeared in front of Lu Ping. Lu Ping reached his palm into the hole and took out a jade scroll. The hole in the space instantly distorted after being stirred by Lu Ping. Then, it disappeared completely, leaving only ripples in the space that spread in all directions. Lu Ping's divine consciousness swept through the jade scroll, and his eyebrows furrowed tightly. After thinking for a while, Lu Ping took out a sound transmission sword and said something into it. Then, the sound transmission sword flew out of the secret room. Lu Ping thought for a while and waved his hand. The artifact spirit Ruyu walked out of the space door of the Golden House and bowed to Lu Ping. Ruyu greets Master. Lu Ping asked, Ruyu, this is the Frost Island in the north of the North Sea. Can you sense anything here? Ruyu shook her head and said, Master, Ruyu did not find any trace of the ship. However, Ruyu has an impression of this Frost Island. Unfortunately, time has passed. In order to preserve my spirituality, Ruyu had to give up this memory. Lu Ping's eyes immediately brightened. Although Ruyu did not find any trace of the ship, she clearly showed a sense of familiarity with the Frost Island. This made Lu Ping believe that the ship of Fei Ling's sect must have passed by the sea near the Frost Island. The sea where the Frost Island was located was in the north of the North Sea, and Fei Ling Mountain was to the south and east of the Frost Island. Then, the sea where the ship disappeared was most likely deep in the southern part of the Frost Island. Lu Ping had a rough idea of what to do. He said again, Fine, call Little Hai and De Gui out first. Wang Qi and a group of Jinling core forging cultivators were nervously looking at the Mara group coming over from the sea. The power that the Mara family had displayed in front of Jinling caused the entire Jinling core forging cultivators to feel an oppressive atmosphere. At this time, a sound transmission sword suddenly cut through the air. Wang Qi felt the scabbard on his waist that was specially used to receive sound transmission swords vibrate. He raised his hand and the sword immediately fell into his hand. Wang Qi scanned with his divine sense and hurriedly turned to a middle-stage core forging cultivator who was obviously a third-generation disciple. He said, Martial Uncle Xian Liang, teacher has sent a message for this disciple to go over. Please allow me. Who was Wang Qi's teacher? Even though Taoist Master Xian Liang did not want Wang Qi to leave, his team of 8 core forging cultivators could form a complete small, 3 talents 5 elements Dao soldier formation. With Taoist Master Xian Liang's cultivation at the 4th level of core forging, he could use this Dao soldier formation to fight against a late-stage or even peak core forging cultivator with the strength of 7 early-stage core forging cultivators. Although Wang Qi's cultivation was not the highest among the 8, his strength was not weak. Normal 3rd-level core forging cultivators would have to retreat in front of Wang Qi's sharp sword skills. Even Taoist Master Xian Liang felt his heart palpitate and facing Wang Qi's sword skills. Once Wang Qi left, the Dao soldier formation could still be used, but its power would be greatly reduced. However, Taoist Master Xian Liang did not have the guts to not let Wang Qi go. Although Taoist Master Xian Liang was also a 3rd-generation disciple and had some fame among them, he was promoted to an inner disciple at the same time as Chen Lian. However, Taoist Master Xian Liang's status was far lower than Chen Lian's. Moreover, Chen Lian was now a weapon-forging grandmaster, which was no weaker than a Dharma adept. As for Lu Ping's status, it was even lower. Taoist Master Xian Liang said helplessly, Mara is approaching the warning zone. He will be fighting soon. Go and come back quickly. As soon as Wang Qi left, one of the cultivators in Taoist Master Xian Liang's team said angrily, What's so great about him? He just has a good teacher. Another cultivator laughed coldly. So what if he has a good teacher? At least he can save his disciple at this critical moment. Can your teachers do that? Another cultivator said, Xian Gang, Xian Tai, don't talk nonsense. The cultivator called Xian Tai retorted, how is this nonsense? Taoist master Xian Liang called his eldest disciple away at this critical moment to avoid the upcoming battle. Taoist Xian Liang knew that Xian Gang and Xian Tai were the disciples of Grand Ancestor Tian Shu. Almost everyone in Zhenling sect knew that Grand Ancestor Tian Shu and Grand Ancestor Tian Ling didn't get along. So, it was not surprising that Xian Gang and Xian Tai didn't have a good impression of Wang Qi, who came from Chonghua Manor. Although Taoist master Xian Liang was unhappy that Lu Xianping called Wang Qi away, he did not want the two brothers to talk nonsense and destroy the morale of the army. Thus, he said sternly, both of you, shut up. As soon as he said that, a tiger's roar came from the island. Many of the blood condensation disciples on the island felt dizzy and ringing in their ears. They quickly covered their ears. Where did the tiger's roar come from? Chapter 9:19. Lu Ping slapped the 3-meter-long and 5-meter-tall tiger, causing it to tumble. He scolded, shut up. Lu Xiaohai finally got out of the golden house, which wasn't small, but looked narrow in Lu Xiaohai's eyes. He was in a great mood and couldn't help but roar. However, Lu Ping slapped him right on the head. Lu Xiaohu's domineering aura of a tiger suddenly became domineering. He lay on the ground and covered his eyes with his 2 tiger paws. He didn't look like the spirit of the tiger demon clan in the past. Instead, he looked like a frightened giant cat. Lu Dague slowly crawled out of the golden house. Lu Ping handed an escape talisman to Wang Qi and said, you are my eldest disciple, the second disciple of Zhenling's current leader, Lu Tianling, Laozu. You have no reason to retreat from the Battle of Frost Island. Only after a bloody battle can you fully understand the responsibilities of a disciple of Zhenling. Lu Ping paused and said, I don't need you to understand this now. However, I won't let you die in vain in this battle. You must have heard of this escape talisman. Take it and use it well. As for Lu Xiaohai and Lu Dague, one of them can attack and the other can defend. They can support you. With the 3 of you working together, I think even a middle-stage core forging cultivator can't do anything to you. Tian Shan Laozu and the other 2 were also shocked by the sudden tiger roar. They knew where the tiger roar came from. Tian Shan Laozu asked, what is this kid doing? How did he catch a tiger demon and bring it to Frost Island? The ancestor of Tian Shan said, I'm afraid it's not an ordinary tiger demon. Although this roar sounds weak, it has a momentum of looking down on the world. I'm afraid it's not the authentic lineal bloodline of Taoist Hu. Tian Shu Laozu said with a dark face, this martial nephew Lu has always been bold and talented, but he is too reckless. If we really capture Taoist Hu's lineal descendant and make him our pet with intelligence, won't we make a strong enemy for our sect? Tian Shan Laozu knew about the conflict between Tian Shu Laozu and Lu Ping, but Tian Shu Laozu's words made sense, so he didn't say much. On the other hand, Laozu Tiancheng said, that kid is as cunning as a ghost. When has he ever been taken advantage of? Senior martial brother Tian Shu, don't worry. Tian Shu Laozu's expression darkened, but he did not say anything more. He raised his head and saw a ray of light flying towards the Zhenling Tao soldier formation that was gathering at the coast. Wang Qi didn't know that he had been noticed by a Dharma manifestation Laozu when he returned to spiritual master Xian Liang's Tao soldier formation. Right now, he was completely immersed in the secret art that Lu Ping had just taught him. This secret art was a secret art that Lu Ping had gotten from spirit beast taming sect Sang Yu. Sang Yu saw that Lu Ping had many spirit pets with extraordinary potential and achievements. She saw that Lu Ping was only using them roughly and exclaimed that it was a waste. That was why she taught this secret art to Lu Ping. This secret art was obtained by spirit beast taming sect from a senior cultivator and could not be considered a direct disciple of the spirit beast taming sect. However, this secret art itself was an incredible existence among the secret arts collected by the spirit beast taming sect. Wang Qi's return caused Xian Gang and Xian Tai's expressions to darken, but spiritual master Xian Liang also heaved a sigh of relief. Perfected Xian Liang knew that the Dao soldier formation team he was leading was about to face a fierce battle. Not only did Wang Qi's return make the Dao soldier formation complete, but it also increased the chances of everyone surviving the battle. Spiritual master Xian Liang was also a person with a clear mind. When he saw that Wang Qi was not transferred away from Frost Island by Lu Ping, he admired Lu Ping's righteousness. At the same time, he immediately realized that Wang Qi must have received some benefits from Lu Ping. With Lu Ping's treasure boy skills, this life-saving benefit might not even be comparable to spiritual master Xian Liang's trump card. At that time, spiritual master Xian Liang might have to be more careful. Perhaps, he might even be able to save his own life. Just as spiritual master Xian Liang was about to ask Wang Qi something, a deep voice suddenly sounded, "Disciples of Jinling, go out and meet the enemy." Spiritual master Xian Liang suddenly raised his head and realized that Mara's army had already approached 5 kilometers away from Frost Island. On the wide coastline that Jinling was guarding, there were 12 blood condensation realm cultivators forming a Tao soldier formation. Each Tao soldier formation consisted of about 80 people. There were also 12 Dao soldier formations consisting of 8 core forging realm cultivators. Other than these, there were more than 10 late core forging realm cultivators following behind these Dao soldier formations. Some were in groups of 3 to 5, while others were alone. After exiting the island's protective formation, they charged towards Mara's army. Tian Shan, Tian Cheng, and Tian Shu patriarchs watched as the two opposing torrents crashed into each other. The earth-shattering battle cries even overshadowed the roars of magic spells and magic treasures. Jinling's side had the advantage of the Dao soldier formation. At the beginning of the battle, the two sides had similar cultivation levels. Jinling's Dao soldier formation was able to suppress the surging Mara's army. However, Mara's army had the advantage in numbers. Once the cultivators in the Dao soldier formation were killed or injured after paying the price of tens of little Mara's lives, then the entire Dao soldier formation would have to change its operation. At the same time, the power of the Dao soldier formation would have to be weakened. Tian Shan Laozu watched as more and more of Jinling's disciples died. He couldn't help but show a look of regret. I wonder how many Dharma adepts among these fallen disciples would become in the future if they were still alive. Tian Cheng Laozu cursed. If it wasn't for the fact that there's always blood Mara's aura nearby, I really want to go out and fight and kill those Maras. Tian Shu Laozu looked at the regretful expression on Tian Shan Laozu's face with disdain. He thought to himself, if Lu Tianling was here, no matter how regretful he would still have a calm expression on his face. At this critical juncture of life and death, this kind of emotionless and calm expression can make people feel like they are the backbone of the sect. This is probably one of the reasons why Guo Tianshan is still not as good as Lu Tianling. But then again, if it wasn't for Guo Tianshan's benevolence towards the sect's disciples, Tian Shu wouldn't have been able to push down Lu Xianling, who was in charge of the sect's deacon at that time, and replace her with Guo Xianshan. Among the highly respected second-generation disciples of Jinling, Lu Tianling had a strict personality, and he did things swiftly and decisively. He was the most respected by the Jinling disciples. Jiang Tianlin Laozu had a dignified appearance, and he had the highest level of cultivation, so he was the most respected by the Jinling disciples. Guo Tianshan Laozu was honest, easygoing, and fair, so he was the most respected by the Jinling disciples. Mei Tianqin Laozu was shrewd, and he was the most respected by the Jinling disciples. The difference was that Jinren Li Xuanin's killing methods were dark, but Tian Shu Laozu's methods were sinister. The overwhelming Mara army crashed into the Dao soldier formation formed by the 12 teams of blood condensation disciples like waves. The formation was like 12 huge reefs on the shore, smashing wave after wave of maras into pieces. However, the 12 huge reefs were also loosening under the constant attacks of the waves, and they were even moving back towards the shore. In the sky, the Dao soldier formation formed by the 12 teams of core forging cultivators also met with a group of core forging Great Mara, and both sides also began to fight fiercely. At the same time, there were more than a dozen late-stage core forging Jinling cultivators, including Du Feng and the others. The Dao soldier formation led by Jinren Xianliang was not very lucky. As soon as they arrived, they encountered a fierce attack from a water Azura that was equivalent to a late-stage core forging Great Azura. Jinren Xianliang tried his best to circulate the Dao soldier formation to block the Great Azura's attack, but he was only able to defend himself. The formation itself was in a state of suppression. Just as Jinren Xianliang was wondering if he needed the help of his sect's late-stage core forging cultivators to temporarily get out of this predicament, he saw the Great Azura thrusting its spear at him again. Jinren Xianliang hurriedly circulated the formation. The 3 talents formation blocked the attack head-on, and the 5 elements formation weakened the attack from the side. Unexpectedly, this time, when everyone gathered their strength, they suddenly felt that their hands were empty. The Great Azura's strength was 1/3 less than before. Perfected Xianliang was invigorated. His spiritual force immediately checked the Dao soldier formation that he was already familiar with. He immediately discovered that the person who blocked the Great Azura's spear was Wang Qi, who was in the heaven's origin position of the 3 talents formation. The Great Azura thrusted its spear again. This time, it was the 5 elements formation's turn to block the attack head-on, and the 3 talents formation's turn to weaken the attack from the side. However, because the impact of the Great Azura's previous attack had obviously decreased, the Mysterious Steel and Mysterious Iron brothers, who were blocking the Great Azura's attack head-on, were not as prepared as before. Jinren Xianliang secretly cursed. Just as he opened his mouth to warn them, the Water Azura's spear had already hit the Mysterious Steel and Mysterious Iron brothers, who were good at defense. Pft! Pft! Amidst their horrified expressions, they spat out 2 mouthfuls of blood. Looking at the Water Azura, who was about to seize the opportunity to attack, the 2 brothers could not help but reveal despair on their faces. Once the Mysterious Steel and Mysterious Iron brothers died, the Dao soldier formation that Jinren Xianliang commanded would definitely be greatly weakened. It would not take long for the Dao soldier formation to fall apart. Without the cooperation of the Dao soldier formation, how long could the few early-stage core forging cultivators last under the attack of Mara's tide, even with the protection of the mother and child traction formation? Apart from Jinren Xianliang and Wang Qi, who had a life-saving item given by their teacher, the rest would probably not be able to escape misfortune. The 2 brothers did not know why, but at the moment of death, they actually looked in Wang Qi's direction at the same time. However, their gazes just happened to see a scene that made them feel complicated. Wang Qi took out his top-notch psychic magic treasure, which many cultivators of the same level envied, and slashed horizontally. A sword light whistled out and actually headed straight for the Azura's spear that was thrusting towards the 2 brothers. He was just an early-stage core forging cultivator. Even if his strength was usually higher than cultivators of the same level, where did he get the courage to challenge the Great Azura, who was equivalent to a 9th-stage core forging cultivator, or even a peak-stage core forging cultivator? He was really overestimating his own strength. Disbelief, shame, and mockery were the final feelings that the Mysterious Steel and Mysterious Iron brothers felt at the moment of life and death. Chapter 920. In front of Lu Ping, there was a small flag revolving around him. Although Lu Ping was sitting on the ground motionlessly, his mind was focused on the small flag. To be more precise, Lu Ping's divine will was focused on the few mysterious runes on the small flag. Ever since Lu Ping had advanced to the core forging stage, he had obtained this mysterious small flag from Jinling's Heaven's Inheritance Cave. Although he knew that this small flag would be of great help to Lu Ping's divine will, and Lu Ping had suspected that there might be other secrets to this small flag, Lu Ping's level at that time had not been able to discover any clues. Hence, as time passed, Lu Ping's curiosity gradually faded. However, this small flag was still an extremely rare divine will treasure in the world of cultivation. Although it only had one function and was weak, it was still very valuable in the world of cultivation. This situation continued as Lu Ping's level of cultivation increased to the peak of the core forging stage, and his divine will was already comparable to that of a mid-Dharma adept. However, he still could not discover any other secrets of this small flag. It was only after the discovery of the Vast Sea relics that the Vast Sea bell had been rung twice by Dongyi Laozu and Demon King Kong Jing. At first, Lu Ping was caught off guard and almost suffered a loss. However, when the bell rang for the second time, Lu Ping, who was on guard, discovered that the originally ordinary surface of the small flag had a few mysterious runes that Lu Ping had never seen before. And it was precisely because of the appearance of these runes that Lu Ping was able to easily block the attack of the Vast Sea bell when the bell rang for the second time. At this time, Lu Ping was naturally very interested in the small flag's changes. The few runes that were revealed were obviously not all of the small flag's secrets. However, after a period of time, although Lu Ping tried his best to unravel the secrets of these runes and at the same time hoped to discover more of the small flag's secrets, there was no progress. However, this also allowed Lu Ping to discover that this small flag not only helped in the use of divine will, but it was also extremely beneficial in the expansion of divine will and in defense. This was until Lu Ping had consecutively fought with 4 Dharma adepts, one of whom was even a mid-Dharma adept. This caused Lu Ping to have no choice but to rely on the small flag's help. At this time, Lu Ping discovered that the small flag once again had a few other runes. The existence of these runes not only made it easier for Lu Ping to use his own divine will, but it also helped Lu Ping's divine will to defend against the attacks of the other Dharma adepts. It was also because of the small flag's changes that Lu Ping was able to severely injure a Dharma adept with a single blow. This was also why Lu Ping was able to remain unscathed under the divine will attacks of a mid-Dharma adept and 2 early Dharma adepts. After the appearance of the Vast Sea bell, it was not that Lu Ping had not thought about whether the small flag in his hand was one of the 3 treasures of the Vast Sea. It was just that the power that the small flag currently displayed could not be compared to that of a spirit treasure. Secondly, the cloud sail was said to have been lost in the past and had been found by the demons. However, the small flag that Lu Ping had obtained from the secret cave of the Heaven's Inheritance Cave had many unexplained mysteries. Now that Lu Ping's divine sense had entered the small banner, he wanted to refine the newly emerged rune patterns so that he could better control the mysterious little banner. At the same time, he also wanted to see if he could find more rune patterns in the little banner by following the clues. Another ray of light streaked across the sky. Tian Shu Laozu took a look at the sound transmission sword, and his expression turned ugly. He said, "The other sects on Frost Island are also in a state of emergency. Up until now, they have found at least 20 traces of the blood Mara. The Jade Shura has not appeared since that day." Tian Cheng Laozu said loudly, "It looks like Mara wants to finish this battle in one go." Tian Shu Laozu asked, "How far are the battles of the other sects?" Tian Shu Laozu said in a low voice, "It's not looking good. Xian Ling sect is doing better, but the Zhanghai sect is using the island's protective formation to defend against Mara's attack. The situation over at the 12 forces is not looking good either." Tian Shu Laozu thought for a moment and said, "Don't worry about the 12 forces. Although we lost the Qiao family, as long as the remaining 11 join forces, even our sect will have to be wary of them. They will show their trump cards at the critical moment." Over at the Zhanghai sect, nephew Lu used his divine will to severely injure a Dharma adept. The morale of the Zhanghai sect will be greatly affected, so it is expected that they will not be able to win. But the ones facing the real danger are still our sect. Although the Tao soldiers have taken the initiative to slow down Mara's attack on the island's protective formation, it is only a matter of time. After all, our sect is facing the strongest attack. Once the island's protective formation is trapped, our sect will have no room to retreat. Tian Shu Laozu flipped his hands and two flames flashed. He said, "We have to fight this battle no matter what. I just don't know when our sect's reinforcements will arrive." After a cultivator entered the Dharma stage, they began to control the power of space. Mara, who was above the Dharma stage, could also control the power of space. After Mara surrounded Frost Island, because of the appearance of Bloody Mara, the teleportation formation on Frost Island was also in danger. The reinforcements on Frost Island could not go through the teleportation formation and could only fly over. This gave Mara enough time to attack Frost Island. Mara's companion Dharma treasures and half-life Dharma treasures usually improved along with Mara's strength. The great Shura that Wang Qi and the others were facing had the strength of a late core forging cultivator. Naturally, the companion Dharma treasure in its hands was no weaker than a spirit-nurturing Dharma treasure. Although the golden scale sword was Lu Ping's personal sword, it was only a top-grade spirit-connected mystic treasure. Not to mention, Wang Qi's cultivation base was far from the great Shura's spear. Even with Wang Qi's 3 talents array formation, he might not be able to match the spear's power. However, just as the golden scale sword was about to hit the spear, a silver light instantly enveloped the golden scale sword, causing the golden longsword to be inlaid with a silver light. It merged with Wang Qi's golden sword aura. Clang! To everyone's surprise, the golden scale sword was able to deflect Azura's spear. Azura's spear, which had been brandished by the spear, was also deflected. The spear brushed past the right shoulders of the Dark Iron and Dark Iron brothers, cutting off 2 strips of flesh that were half a foot long. Blood dripped down into the sea. The power of Wang Qi's spear was not only unexpected by the Profound Steel and Profound Iron brothers, but also by the others. Even Wang Qi himself did not expect it to be so powerful that it could deflect the spear of a late core forging great Shura. Although spiritual master Xian Liang was surprised, he was still the person in charge of the formation. Seeing that his side had blocked the great Shura's surekill attack, he immediately used the power of the formation on himself while the great Shura was still exhausted. He threw a short stick at the back of the great Shura's head. After the great Shura's attack failed, the 3 talents and 5 elemental Dao soldier formation continued to operate. Spiritual master Xian Liang could no longer dodge this attack. He was hit so hard that he could not get up for a moment. He fainted and fell from the sky towards the sea. When the other cultivators saw that spiritual master Xian Liang's attack had succeeded, they hurriedly operated the formation and chased after him. Although Wang Qi's hands were numb from the great Shura's spear, the Profound Steel and Profound Iron brothers ignored their injuries and attacked the fallen great Shura. Before the great Shura could completely wake up, he was already dismembered in midair. Although spiritual master Xian Liang's team had killed a late core forging great Shura, the Dao soldier formation could not operate smoothly because Profound Steel and Profound Iron were heavily injured. Naturally, the power of the Dao soldier formation would decrease as well. Spiritual master Xian Liang made a prompt decision and immediately ordered everyone to retreat towards the island's protective formation. Just as everyone was about to retreat back to Frost Island, a late core forging great Azura who was fighting spiritual master Xian Yu suddenly attacked the great army formation formed by spiritual master Xian Liang and the others after receiving a blow from spiritual master Xian Yu. At this moment, because everyone was about to retreat to the island, they had already begun to slack off. They did not expect that this Azura would actually ignore Sage Xuanyu's attack and forcefully attack. For a moment, they were all caught unprepared. Perfected Xian Liang shouted and tried his best to command everyone to activate the Dao soldier formation, intending to maximize everyone's defense. The protective formation around the 8 of them was about to run out of energy. The 3 talents and 5 elements had combined into one, but they suddenly realized that Wang Qi had used an extremely strange defensive technique. Perfected Xian Liang's heart moved, and he shouted, "Use Xian Qi's protection divine ability." Everyone channeled their quintessential essence into the huge tortoiseshell shield that Wang Qi had conjured with the Dao soldier formation. Ka-cha! There was a shattering sound. Although Wang Qi's defensive divine art had been shattered by Azura's unexpected attack, it still managed to block the attack. Wang Qi felt a great force coming from the shattered tortoiseshell shield. Including Reverend Xian Liang and the others, they were all thrown backwards by this great force and fell onto Frost Island. The Great Azura had forcefully taken a blow from Reverend Xian Yu, and its back was smashed to pieces by countless raindrops. The Azura turned around and fled. It was about to shake off Reverend Xian Yu who was chasing after it, but a cold light shot towards it and pierced through its heart. Reverend Du Feng withdrew his sword and stood. Reverend Xian Yu seemed to be very dissatisfied with Reverend Du Feng's interference, and turned around to attack the other Great Azura without even greeting him. But at this time, Reverend Du Feng's cry of shock entered Reverend Xian Yu's ears, "Watch out!" Reverend Xian Yu's heart tightened. His intuition from 200 to 300 years of life and death battles told him that he was most likely facing a moment of life and death. Reverend Xian Yu tried his best to shake off this feeling of being on the edge of life and death, but it was to no avail. This feeling only grew stronger. A furious roar that seemed to come from heaven's Laozu came from Frost Island, "You dare!" Yet this voice was the last call Reverend Xian Yu heard. Then, he felt that Reverend Du Feng seemed to be trying to save him with all his strength, but his own consciousness seemed to be frozen by a strange coldness and thrown into a bottomless abyss. His vision was quickly swallowed by darkness. Lu Ping had appeared on the battlefield before Heaven's Laozu, but he only had time to save Du Feng who was trying to kill Reverend Xian Yu together with him. Reverend Xian Yu himself had turned into countless pieces of ice and fell towards the sea surface. Not even his bones were left. Chapter 921. After receiving the Jade Scroll, Lu Ping knew that Mara's attack on Frost Island would be a hard battle. Therefore, after refining the new runes on the little flag, he quietly left the secret room and headed out of Frost Island. Lu Ping's original plan was to strike first, but he didn't expect Mara to act first and take spiritual master Xian Yu's life. Xue Shura, who ambushed enlightened master Xian Yu, initially wanted to kill enlightened master Du Feng as well. But unexpectedly, Lu Ping had already made his move. The charming autumn sword morphed into countless fishes and formed a wall of sword light in front of enlightened master Du Feng, whose chest had caved in. The seeping sword art was good at both offense and defense. It managed to block Mara's fatal blow. At this time, Tianqing Laozu and spiritual master Xian Sen were approaching Lu Ping. However, Lu Ping didn't hand Du Feng over to Laozu. Instead, he pushed Du Feng over to spiritual master Xian Sen who was in the core forging realm. Just as Tianqing Laozu was confused, his expression suddenly changed. He flipped his palm and pushed backwards. A fire tiger roared and pounced behind him. At the same time, an enormous force came from Tianqing Laozu's back. Although the fire tiger had blocked most of the force, the remaining force still pushed Tianqing Laozu dozens of steps forward before he could stabilize himself. Ancestor Tiancheng suddenly looked back and happened to see a column of water turn into mist under the flame, covering the area within a radius of dozens of feet. However, this mist didn't hinder Laozu's mental investigation. A water Azura dressed as a woman was holding a spirit treasure that looked like a wine cup. She was walking towards Tianqing Laozu through the mist. On the other side, Lu Ping saw that spiritual master Xian Sen had safely sent Du Feng back to Frost Island. When he turned around, the ice Azura that had ambushed and killed spiritual master Xian Yu was already faintly appearing in front of Lu Ping. Its transparent body looked like it was about to be completely covered by the light. After spiritual master Xian Sen brought Du Feng back to Frost Island, Laozu of Sky Mountain had already sent the news. Spiritual Master Xian Sun immediately commanded the cultivators of Jinling to use the 3 talents 5 elements Dao soldier formation to resist Mara's attacks. At the same time, this was to reduce the losses of his disciples. The disciples of Jinling gradually retreated and began to rely on the island's protective formation to resist Mara's attacks. At the same time, they also wanted to free up the space outside the island. When Dharma adepts began to fight, the area outside the island was no longer safe. Seeing that the disciples of Jinling had begun to retreat, Mara surged forward with the intention of breaking through the obstruction of the disciples of Jinling and shattering the island's protective formation. Then, he would enter Frost Island and occupy the large spirit vein. Meanwhile, the people of Jinling would rely on the formation's support to stop Mara's attacks. Lu Ping's pair of flying swords circled in the air. The ice azura in front of him suddenly revealed a sinister smile. Lu Ping's mental consciousness swept out and immediately discovered that the water vapor in the surroundings had begun to condense into tiny ice needles that were hard to see with the naked eye. The ice azura's hands clasped and pushed, and the tiny ice needles from all directions all flew towards Lu Ping, causing Lu Ping to not even have the space to dodge. Lu Ping's pair of swords shot out and went straight for the ice azura's neck. At the same time, he pressed down slightly with his hands, causing a waterspout to hang upside down. A cylindrical water barrier surrounded Lu Ping in the middle. The countless ice needles had just shot into the water barrier when they were hit by the crisscrossing undercurrents within the water barrier, causing them to lose their momentum and quickly melt within it. The ice azura opened its mouth and spat out a gust of cold air dozens of feet away. As soon as the upside-down waterspout came into contact with the cold air, it completely froze into ice. A huge icicle, together with Lu Ping, was sealed within the icicle. However, at that moment, the ice azura's expression changed. It punched out, and the icicle exploded into countless pieces. However, there was no trace of Lu Ping among them. When he looked down, he saw a pair of flying swords crisscrossing, and 3 great shuras had already been beheaded, pierced through the chest, and cut in half at the waist. One of the great shuras was also equivalent to a late-stage core forging realm cultivator. The ice azura was furious, and with it as the center, a gust of cold air spread out in all directions. Soon, a layer of white frost formed in the void, forming the outline of a human figure. Lu Ping lifted the cloud light 5 elements robe, and the ice azura's ice sword was already stabbing towards Lu Ping. Lu Ping's expression was solemn. This ice sword was obviously the ice azura's accompanying spiritual treasure. In the hands of the ice azura, it was an existence comparable to a calamity spiritual treasure. There was a flash of light under Lu Ping's feet, and his entire person flashed in all directions. However, as the ice sword was waved, these figures were all frozen into ice sculptures. Only Lu Ping's real body was caught up by the ice sword while he was dodging. At this time, it was too late to withdraw the autumn dew sword, but Lu Ping crossed his hands, and 2 long swords crisscrossed. After 2 clanging sounds, although the pair of flying swords were no match for the ice sword's spirit treasure, the ice sword was also hit by the flying swords and stopped in midair, unable to chase after the ice sword. The autumn dew sword flew back, and together with the pair of flying swords that Lu Ping had cast, they circled around, facing the ice sword in the hands of the ice azura. The thin stream sword. Whether it was the thin stream sword or the long stream sword, each sword had condensed 9 treasures, and was a top-notch spirit-nurturing spiritual treasure. In addition, Lu Ping had inherited the vast sea sword technique, so he was able to fully activate the power of the pair of flying swords. Under the combination of the 2 swords, the pair of flying swords were barely qualified to compete with spirit-nurturing spiritual treasures. Just as Lu Ping and the ice azura were fighting, Tianqing Laozu had already fought with the other water azura. Although Tianqing Laozu had the protection of the mother and child traction formation, and his fire-based skills were superb, under the attacks of the water azura's accompanying spiritual treasure, he was constantly losing ground. He had enough defense, but not enough offense. Another jade scroll cut through the sky, and Tianqing Laozu took it and looked at it. He laughed coldly and threw the jade scroll to Tianshu Laozu, who was beside him, and said, "The water mist pavilion is asking for help." Tianshu Laozu took the jade scroll and scanned it with his divine will. He said angrily, "Two Dharma adepts are fighting against a blood Asura, and they still want to ask for help. What should our sect do? A few tens of disciples have perished. Could it be that the pressure they're under is heavier than our sect? Over 100 disciples of our sect have perished, and even 7 or 8 core forging realm cultivators have perished. Moreover, there are over 10 disciples that have entered the battle while carrying injuries. How much pressure is their Mistwater Pavilion suffering?" Tian Shan Laozu said, "It's the island's protective formation that can't hold on any longer. It's not that the two Dharma adepts of the Water Mist Pavilion can't stop the Blood Asura. Instead, it's the Blood Asura that's tangling with the two of them, causing them to be unable to help their disciples. Now, the disciples of the Water Mist Pavilion can no longer rely on the island's protective formation and are hiding within it." Tianshu Laozu said anxiously, "Doesn't that mean that the Water Mist Pavilion can only be attacked passively? It's only a matter of time before the island's protective formation is broken through." Tian Shan Laozu sighed and said, "If one part of Frost Island is broken through, then it's completely broken through. We still have to save the Water Mist Pavilion, but there's no need to rush. The Water Mist Pavilion won't fall so easily." There was an explosion in the sky. Tian Shan and Tianshu Laozu looked up and saw Tianqing Laozu rushing back from midair. He crashed hard into the protective shield of the island's protective formation, and ripples were created. On the other side of the sky, the water Shura that was fighting with Tianqing Laozu was also retreating. No matter how much he flipped and bumped, the crystal baron in his hand didn't dare to shake at all. It was as if the crystal baron would shatter if he moved it. Just as the water Shura stabilized his body, a cloud of mist appeared in the crystal baron. The mist flowed up along the burnt body of the water Shura. After the mist flowed past, the injuries caused by Tianqing Laozu began to recover rapidly. Tianqing Laozu jumped up from the island's protective formation. A few Mara who saw the opportunity rushed forward and saw Tianqing Laozu's face turn red. He spat out a mouthful of blood and turned it into a flame in midair. It turned the few Mara who rushed forward into ashes. Tianqing Laozu coughed hard and scolded, "Son of a bitch, you want to take advantage of the old man? Why don't you take a look at your own teeth?" His words seemed to be directed at the few Shuras who had been burned to ashes, but it also seemed to be directed at the blood Shura who was holding the crystal baron. Seeing that Tianqing Laozu was at a disadvantage, Tianshu Laozu was anxious and wanted to go forward to help. However, Tian Shan Laozu reached out and stopped him. "Wait, junior brother Tianqing can still hold on. Once we go out, other blood Mara will come out to fight. Let me go first." Tianshu Laozu heard this and said, "But senior brother, you will still find blood Mara to fight when you go out." Tian Shan Laozu smiled and said, "The most important thing now is to buy time. I think the cultivators from our sect and other sects are already on their way." Tianqing Laozu had already fought with the water Shura again. However, this time, Tianqing Laozu did not dare to go too far away from the island's protective formation. With the support of the formation, Tianqing Laozu could borrow the power of the island's protective formation to fight against the water Shura who had the accompanying spiritual treasure. In this way, although Tianqing Laozu had the support of the island's protective formation, he was still at a disadvantage when fighting against the water Shura. After all, while Tianqing Laozu borrowed the power of the formation, he was also bound by the formation and could not roam around in the sky like the water Shura. However, Tianqing Laozu only defended and did not attack, so the water Shura could not do anything to him for a while. Tian Shan Laozu flew through the air and walked out of the island's protective formation. He did not bring the protective shield of the mother and child traction formation with him. A green Shura was standing in front of Tian Shan Laozu. Tian Shan Laozu seemed to know that there was a Shura here and did not show any surprise at its appearance. Roar! An angry roar came from the other side of Frost Island. The ice Shura was filled with hatred. The human cultivator in front of it was like a slippery loach. He clearly had the strength to fight it, but he chose not to fight it head-on. Instead, he relied on his escape skills to wander around, hiding from place to place. However, what angered Ice Azura even more was that not only was this person dodging all over the place, he just had to purposefully charge towards the Devil Azura army that was attacking Frost Island. His 4 flying swords rampaged through the Devil Azura army, and more than a dozen little Azuras were often turned into broken limbs. Even if he occasionally crashed into the Great Azura army, those Great Azuras whose strength was equivalent to that of the middle and early stage of the core forging realm would rarely be able to withstand a single blow from him. Chapter 922. Lu Ping's actions completely infuriated the ice Shura that was chasing him. After the two of them exchanged blows, no less than 7 or 8 great Shuras had already fallen under Lu Ping's sword, including 2 great Shuras that were equivalent to late-stage core forging cultivators. When the ice Shura saw that it couldn't catch up to Lu Ping, it seemed to have made up its mind in its rage and suddenly stopped moving. Lu Ping thought to himself, "Oh no," and was about to turn around and rush toward the ice Shura. The ice sword in the ice Shura's hand had turned into an ice bead the size of a pellet. The ice Shura spat it out of its mouth and smashed toward the island's protective formation like lightning. Lu Ping's pair of flying swords missed, but Lu Ping didn't even look at the ice bead. After the fainting autumn sword missed, the thin water-flowing sword had already turned around from the ice Shura's back. The two swords combined and stabbed toward the ice Shura's back. The ice Shura released 18 ice walls in a row and finally managed to block the two swords. Meanwhile, screams of pain came from Frost Island behind Lu Ping. The ice bead pierced through Frost Island's protective formation in one fell swoop. 3 of the Jinling cultivators behind the formation were pierced by the ice bead. The cold energy carried by the ice bead flowed through the blood vessels of the wounds and into the victim's heart space, turning them into ice sculptures. Then, as the heart space exploded, the ice sculptures shattered into ice shards. A second-generation core forging cultivator tried to stop the ice bead, but the ice bead was the ice Shura's companion spirit treasure after all. It wasn't something a late-stage core forging cultivator could stop. The ice bead directly shattered his natal artifact and went straight for his head under his despairing gaze. Just as the Jinling sect was about to lose another late-stage core forging cultivator, the ice beads suddenly shot back without warning. The second-generation cultivator coughed up a mouthful of blood due to the destruction of his magic treasure, but there was no joy in his eyes. Instead, there was a hint of sorrow. Originally, although this person's chances of advancing to the Dharma stage were slim, there was still a sliver of hope, giving him some hope to work hard. But now that his natal treasure had been destroyed, it had directly injured his foundation. Even if his injuries recovered in the future, the damage to his foundation would destroy his last hope of advancing to the Dharma stage. Perhaps even he himself knew that even if that sliver of hope was not extinguished, with his abilities, it was almost impossible for him to advance to the Dharma stage in the future. But sometimes, people would always rely on hope to improve their mental state. But now, this person didn't even have any hope. Although he still had over 100 years before his lifespan came to an end, these 100 years were nothing to him, and he was just a walking corpse. Looking up, he saw that Lu Xianping, who was in the sky, had somehow combined the 4 flying swords into a great sword formation. Taking advantage of the time when the ice Shura's natal treasure flew away, he had already trapped the ice Shura in the sword formation. No wonder the ice bead suddenly returned when it was about to take his life. With martial nephew Lu's unfathomable level of cultivation, if the blood Shura lost his natal treasure, perhaps he really wouldn't be a match for him. Perhaps the people in the sect who really had the hope of advancing to the Dharma stage would always be people like Marshal Nephew Lu Xianping. His dream of advancing to the Dharma stage was just a self-deceiving dream. Junior brother Zhou, how are you? Forefather Tianshu had sensed that something was wrong when the Ice Azura suddenly attacked Frost Island with her life-bound spirit treasure. But by the time he reacted, the ice sword had already pierced through the island's protective formation and killed several people in a row. Jinren Zhou laughed bitterly and said, "No worries, I can still hold on." Tianshu Laozu sighed and turned to walk out of the island. With Tianshu Laozu's vision, he could see everything that had happened to Jinren Zhou. However, these things couldn't be explained away with words. Just as Tianshu Laozu walked to the island's protective formation, a rainbow bridge had already crossed over the sea. The rainbow light flashed with intoxicating colors, but Tianshu Laozu's eyes were dark. He reached out with his right hand, and a slingshot appeared in his hand. His left and right palms lit up, and a golden pellet was pinched into the slingshot with his left hand. With a sudden pull and release, the golden pellet turned into a golden arc in the sky, and then collided with the rainbow bridge. Ever since Tianshu Laozu lost to Lu Ping, Tianshu Laozu reflected on the painful experience and studied many spells and techniques. This increased his ability to adapt to the situation, and at the same time, increased his strength significantly. However, Tianshu Grand Ancestor knew very well that this so-called increase in strength wasn't because he still had great potential. Instead, it was because his original strength hadn't been fully unleashed after entering the Avatar realm. This was also the reason why Tianshu Grand Ancestor didn't have any offensive moves against Lu Ping. In the end, he could only rely on his cultivation base to suppress Lu Ping. But in the end, he was defeated by Lu Ping. 4 colors of the rainbow light were destroyed by Tianshu Laozu's golden pellet, but the remaining 3 colors still collided with the island's protective formation. Tianshu Laozu's expression was dark. At this moment, he had used up all his previous strength, and had yet to recover. He forcefully condensed a spell and attacked, but it wasn't even 30 to 40% of his usual power. He only managed to knock down 2 colors, and the remaining color could no longer be stopped, and directly collided with the island's protective formation. At the core of the mother-child traction formation, spiritual master Xian Chen shook his head helplessly. He took out the stone that had been embedded into the formation plate that had already turned into pieces, and then replaced it with a supreme-grade spirit stone. At the same time, there were several disciples walking around on the enormous formation plate. From time to time, they would remove the high-grade spirit stones embedded into the formation plate that had used up all their spirit energy, and replace them with high-grade spirit stones that were full of spirit energy. Only the dozen or so grooves around spiritual master Xian Chen were embedded with supreme-grade spirit stones, and spiritual master Xian Chen was personally replacing them. Underneath the formation plate, the few spirit veins that Jinling had accumulated on Frost Island were also providing endless spirit energy to the formation plate. Tianshu Laozu stood at the side and said, "Senior brother, I'm afraid that Tianshu won't be able to hold on for long." At the side, Tian Fan Laozu didn't reply immediately. Instead, he stared for a moment before saying, "Just this much effort alone has already used up a huge amount of high-grade spirit stones and supreme-grade spirit stones. However, there's no other way. That Jade Shura is definitely hiding in the surroundings right now. The moment you make a move and get entangled by the other Mara, that Jade Shura will definitely make a move. At that time, even if I make a move, I'm afraid that I won't be able to stop the Jade Shura from breaking the formation." Tianshu Laozu said, "But that hidden blood demon still hasn't shown himself. Even if we work together to stop the Jade Shura, that blood demon is enough to be the key to breaking the formation. Moreover, this time, Mara is attacking Frost Island en masse, but there are too few devil cultivators among them." Tian Fan Laozu was still indifferent. Tianshu Laozu said anxiously, "Linggu sect and Soaring Feather sect are already shrinking the island's great formation. They are retreating towards the spirit vein at the center of Frost Island. Mara has already successfully landed at the place where the two sects are stationed. If, Tian Fan Laozu suddenly said, this Ling Gu sect and Soaring Feather sect are really useless. However, junior sister, where do you think that Xiang Lu is right now? Tian Shui Laozu was stunned and said, senior brother thinks that he will come here. Just as Tian Shui Laozu finished speaking, a cultivator-like person dressed in snow-white clothes suddenly appeared in the sky above the Frost Island's great formation. The Jade Shura had appeared. Unlike Blood Devil Luo's red eyes, Jade Shura looked like a normal human. But she had a unique aura that was like the condensation of the original spirit. If she appeared in front of a cultivator, she would not be able to hide it. However, when they used their unique escape arts, the aura of spirit energy became the best way for them to hide their aura. It was the best way to attack and kill cultivators. The entire sea seemed to be boiling. The Jade Shura was high up in the sky, as if she was the king of the sea. The angry seawater surged as if it wanted to bury the entire Frost Island at the bottom of the sea. Boom, 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 the sects that were still defending the island's great formation without retreating all collapsed the moment the Jade Shura appeared. The entire island's great formation began to shrink inwards in a strange way. As long as they could protect the large spirit stone mine in the center of Frost Island, then the defense of Frost Island could be considered a victory. Jade Shura's appearance had completely changed the situation on the battlefield. The enemy was strong, and they were weak. The cultivators of the North Sea had to quickly pull back their battle lines, abandon their previous strategy of fighting individually, and work together to fight the enemy. Perhaps that was the only way they could protect the spiritual stone mine under the siege of Devil Luo. Except for Jinling. Jinling was still guarding the outer perimeter of Frost Island, not allowing Mara to land on Frost Island from the area Jinling was stationed at. The frost cliff where the medium-sized spirit stone mine was had been built into a temporary palace by Jinling. However, the location of the palace was not far from the coast. Therefore, the other sects could retreat, but Jinling could not. This mid-sized spirit stone mine had attracted a lot of envy, jealousy, and hatred for Jinling's sect in the past few decades. This time, the cultivators hiding at the center of Frost Island could finally rejoice in Jinling's sect's misfortune. You deserve it, aren't you? Who told you to take it all for yourself? Although the cultivators of the sects would not say these words out loud, everyone understood that without the lips, the teeth would be interdependent. Without Jinling, the other sects of Frost Island would not be able to resist the siege of Mo Luo's army even if they joined forces. Therefore, the cultivators of the sects, from Laozu to the ordinary cultivators, were furious that Jinling was still stubbornly defending that medium-sized spirit stone mine. At this time, he was still guarding that spirit stone mine without letting go. Was he going to give up the large spirit stone mine on Frost Island for that medium-sized spirit stone mine? The curses gradually rose. Although Laozu did not say anything with a dark face, the disciples of his sects, including the usually prestigious core forging cultivators, also began to curse loudly. Was Jinling going to drag the entire North Sea cultivation world down for a medium-sized spirit stone mine? If they could survive this, they might have to reduce Jinling's share of this large spirit stone mine. Yes, that was how it should be. For a moment, although the cultivators of the sects still looked impassioned, their thoughts were all conveying the same thought. Even the old and steady Dharma adepts seemed to be moved. Between the looks of their eyes, it was unknown what kind of plan they were conveying that could only be understood but could not be put into words. Chapter 923. Jinling always worried about inequality rather than scarcity, and the cultivation world was no exception. Jinling's sole possession of a medium-sized spirit stone mine with abundant reserves had already made many cultivators in the North Sea envious. Now that Frost Island was being attacked by Mara, and Jinling was fighting a bloody battle for its own spirit stone mine, the first thing that came to the cultivators' minds was not to join forces to defeat the enemy, but rather to hope that this spirit stone mine would be destroyed by Mara's hands. Of course, it would be best if both sides suffered heavy losses, and Jinling would lose 1 or 2 Dharma adepts because of this, even if they were heavily injured. This was the nature of human nature, and even cultivators were no exception. Fortunately, with a great enemy in front of them, the cultivators of the various sects could not do things like backstabbing. After all, the crisis on Frost Island had not been resolved yet. At the very least, the sects understood that without the lips, the teeth would be interdependent. Therefore, after the various sects pulled back to the center of Frost Island, the protective shield of the island where Jinling was stationed and the center of Frost Island was not destroyed by the swarming Mara. Laozu of the various sects sent their cultivators to protect this path of retreat for Jinling, and Jinling also sent many of his disciples here to join forces with the cultivators of the various sects, blocking Mara who intended to cut off the connection between the two sides. Of course, the reason why the sects put in so much effort was not just because without the lips, the teeth would be interdependent. It was because when the Jade Shura appeared, there were 2 auras that rose from Jinling's garrison that made Laozu of the various sects shocked and bewildered them. They were shocked because these 2 auras were too familiar to the North Sea cultivation world's Laozu, to the point that they were horrified. The Wind and Snow Immortals. In the era when Xianling sect still dominated the North Sea cultivation world, these 2 were the only ones in the North Sea who could defeat Laozu at the same time. They were also the most solid foundation for Jinling to restrict Xianling sect. Even after celestial phenomenon Laozu became a grand adept and became the new symbol of Jinling, the name of the Wind and Snow Immortals still shook the entire North Sea cultivation world. This was because when people thought of Jinling, they would not only think of celestial phenomenon Laozu, but also Jinling, who had the Wind and Snow Immortals, had 2 Dharma adepts, and Jinling had the most basic requirements of a large sect. However, they were puzzled. Hadn't Patriarch Tian Fan already gone to the East Sea? How long had it been since he went to the East Sea? When did he return to the North Sea? Why didn't the sects know? Why did Tian Fan Laozu sneak into Frost Island so secretly without letting any of the forces in the North Sea know? Looking at the sky full of Mara, could it be that Jinling had already predicted that Mara would start a war of this scale, and had even predicted that Jade Shura would make a move? Or was this a plot by Jinling? No matter how many times Laozu's thoughts turned, the current grim situation made it impossible for the sects to care about anything else. At least the appearance of the Wind and Snow Immortals had lifted the morale of the North Sea cultivators, who had been low because of Jade Shura's appearance. Pitter-patter. However, the joy of the appearance of the Wind and Snow Immortals was immediately drowned out by the crowd's fear. At this time, people remembered that the 3 of them were almost equivalent to 2 great Dharma adepts in battle. When the 3 of them fought, unless they were adepts of the same level, even early Dharma adepts could be affected by the aftermath of the battle. An invisible wave rippled out from the center of the 3's battle. Within a radius of a few hundred feet, minor repairs Shura below the core forging stage were all turned back into the source of heaven and earth. The Grand Shura also suffered heavy casualties. Fortunately, these Grand Shura were alert, and most of them stayed away when the 2 sides were fighting. This wave also affected the human adepts on Frost Island. Even with the protection of the island's protective formation, many blood condensation adepts still bled from the mouth and nose of the battle. A Jade Shura's strength was only equivalent to a mid-Dharma adept's, but if the companion spirit treasure of the Jade Shura, which was equivalent to a second disaster spirit treasure, was included, then its strength could be close to that of a great Dharma adept. One only had to look at the vast sea relic and the invincible ancestor Tian Kong who wielded the second calamity spirit treasure, the mountain-splitting axe, to know how powerful a second calamity spirit treasure was in the hands of a mid-Dharma adept. However, there was a difference. The mountain-splitting axe was not Tian Kong Laozu's life treasure, but the companion's spirit treasure, and companion's spirit treasure in the hands of every Shura was something that had accompanied them since they were born. Therefore, the power of the companion's spirit treasure in the hands of a jade Shura was even stronger than that of Tian Kong Laozu, who wielded the mountain-splitting axe. Although the wind and snow immortals' participation in the battle did not change the situation of the battle, it greatly raised the morale of all the sects on Frost Island. Moreover, under the attack of the wind and snow immortals, although the Jade Shura could protect herself, it was extremely difficult for her to gain the upper hand. The battle between Lu Ping and the Ice Shura had reached its climax. The companion's spirit treasure that could quickly switch between Ice Sword and Ice Bead was firmly suppressing Lu Ping. If it was not for the incredible defensive power of the fluttering flag above Lu Ping's head after it returned to being a spirit-nurturing spirit treasure, Lu Ping might have been able to escape from the Ice Shura's relentless attacks, even if he was not injured. Although Lu Ping had used the 4 flying swords, beautiful autumn waters and thin water forever to form the Sea of All Rivers sword formation, hoping to completely trap the Shura within the sword formation. However, after the companion's spirit treasure returned, the ice bead first turned into an ice sword that crashed into the sword formation, and then turned into a giant ice ball. The ice Shura directly melted into the ice ball, and just like that, it ignored the tens of thousands of sword lights formed by the 4 flying swords and rushed out. After that, Lu Ping was once again at a disadvantage in the battle against the ice Shura. Fortunately, Lu Ping had a treasure like the water-controlling flag, which allowed Lu Ping to withstand the ice Shura's pressure. The water-controlling flag was originally a treasure left behind by Jiao Yuqiang, the master craftsman of the Fei Ling sect. After it was completely repaired by Lu Ping, its power had been completely restored. In addition, Lu Ping had condensed 9 Shield of Vigor into 1, and he had recently mastered the great protective power, Water Curtain Heaven Splendor. When the Water Curtain Heaven Splendor was used with the help of the water-controlling flag, Lu Ping finally understood how Jiao Yuqiang was able to withstand the combined attacks of 3 or 4 early Dharma adepts with just a treasure that had just entered the spirit cultivation stage. Lu Ping had used the great protective power of the water-controlling flag to directly block the attack of the companion's spirit treasure. Although the shield had been pierced, the ice sword was also at the end of its strength after piercing through the water curtain of the water-controlling flag. Before Lu Ping could use any other methods to block it, the ice Shura had already withdrawn the ice sword. At this time, Lu Ping finally realized that in the sky above Frost Island, there were more than 10 blood Shura participating in the battle against Frost Island. Other than the 4 that Jinling was dealing with, the other sects Laozu were also fighting with the blood Shura. However, what shocked Lu Ping was that among these 10 or so fighting groups, the ones fighting were all blood Shura. There was not a single blood demon. However, when Mara was attacking Frost Island, he could clearly sense the presence of the blood demons. In addition, the number of demonic cultivators in Mara's army had obviously decreased. The uneasiness in Lu Ping's heart had already become stronger. Where did these demonic cultivators go, and what were they doing? Naturally, Lu Ping was not the only one who had realized something was wrong. Many of the Dharma adepts fighting in the sky above Frost Island and the cultivators in the protective shield of Frost Island had already realized that something was wrong. However, they were either entangled by the blood Shura or trapped in the protective shield of the island. Even if they were anxious, they could only watch as the hidden demonic cultivators calmly used their own methods. At this time, Tian Fan Laozu, who was fighting with the Jade Shura in the sky above Frost Island, suddenly gave a loud warning. He said, "All sects, beware of the demonic cultivator's soul-devouring technique." Tian Fan Laozu's sudden warning spread throughout the entire Frost Island. Without any hesitation, Jinling immediately ordered the main formation cultivators in their respective Dao soldier formations to take some measures to defend against the attacks of the demonic cultivators. The other sects in the center of Frost Island were a little slower. It was only when the mid-Dharma adepts of their respective sects also noticed that something was amiss and issued a warning that they began to hurriedly put up some defensive measures. However, at this time, the Mara army that was besieging them seemed to have already expected this. They immediately went crazy and began to attack the protective shield of the island. Many of the cultivators from the various sects lost their lives due to the earlier chaos from Mara's wild attacks. At the border between the Lingu sect and the 12 sects, Mara even broke open a gap. Dozens of Mara swarmed out from this gap. If it wasn't for the alertness of the dozen mid- and late-core forging adepts from the 12 sects and the Lingu sect, who risked their lives to rush out and reseal the gap, and persevered until the protective shield of the island closed the gap again, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Even so, the dozens of Mara that rushed into the protective shield of the island still caused great damage to the cultivators from the various sections. 20 to 30 blood condensation adepts were killed by Mara in the chaos, and a few core forging adepts also fell. Especially the dozen or so mid and late core forging adepts who blocked the gap. They were facing a pincer attack from Mara, and the pressure they had to bear was even heavier. After persevering to restore the protective shield of the island, only 7 or 8 of the 10 or so cultivators survived. However, this was only the beginning of the nightmare. Following a cry of alarm, a mass of dark clouds came from the north of Frost Island, covering the sky and sun, turning the entire sky and earth pitch black. Many cultivators let out cries of alarm. That dark cloud was obviously something that surrounded the body of the demonic cultivators. How many demonic cultivators were hidden within this scene that seemed to cover the sky and sun? At this time, Lu Ping was already retreating in the direction of Jinling. Not only him, but the other Jinling Dharma form Laozu and the Dharma adepts of the various sects were also retreating in the direction of their respective sections. Lu Ping's divine consciousness had long discovered the situation within the dark clouds. Hundreds of blood fiends suddenly appeared under the leadership of 4 blood fiends. Under the cover of the dark clouds, they formed a strange formation in midair. It seemed to be a huge Dao soldier formation. Chapter 924. Under the leadership of the 4 blood demons, hundreds of demonic cultivators activated the soul-devouring spell in the form of a Dao soldier formation. What kind of scene would this be? Just as the two sides were in a deadlock, the appearance of these hundreds of demonic cultivators could completely break the balance of power between the two sides, tilting the scales of victory completely in Mara's favor. Just as these hundreds of demonic cultivators appeared, the 10 or so Dharma adepts who were fighting in the sky all simultaneously returned to the island's protective formation. This was a moment of life and death. Without the protection of the Dharma adepts, how could the blood condensation and core forging disciples in the sect have the strength to defend against the attacks of the hundreds of demonic cultivators led by the 4 blood demons? Moreover, these Dharma adepts were actually protecting themselves. Under the joint attack of these hundreds of demonic cultivators, if it was just 1 or 2 Dharma adepts, even ordinary Dharma adepts would not be able to block the attack of this soul-devouring spell. These Dharma adepts could only combine the power of each other and their disciples, and rely on the island's protective formation, in order to block this killer move of Mara. However, how could the Blood Shura allow these Dharma adepts to have their way? Previously, when the patriarchs of the various sects were entangled with the Blood Shura, other than the mid-Dharma adepts, almost every early Dharma adept was suppressed when facing the Blood Shura. Some did not even have the slightest ability to fight back, and could only rely on the formation to resist the Blood Shura, who had spiritual companion treasures. Now that these Dharma adepts were anxious to return to the formation, the situation suddenly turned around. The Blood Shura were now entangled, not allowing these humans Laozu to return to the island. This, of course, included Lu Ping. However, Lu Ping was already prepared. Just as the demonic cultivator suddenly attacked, Lu Ping immediately turned and ran. The Blood Shura naturally would not let Lu Ping succeed. Moreover, this core forging human minor repairs in front of it had actually been able to attack and defend for so long. This had already made the Blood Shura angry. Just as Lu Ping was about to retreat, the ice sword actually made a circle in midair, actually using this Blood Shura's killer move. Lu Ping continued to move forward for tens of feet, but suddenly realized that the surrounding tens of feet was filled with a chill. This was actually a technique that combines space and natural powers. Although this chill did not form an ice wall or an ice castle, it caused Lu Ping to feel a strange chill penetrate through Lu Ping's skin and into his blood and flesh with every step he took. Moreover, this strange chill seemed to be trying to freeze the space, making it difficult for Lu Ping to move within this range of tens of feet. The Blood Shura's face was ferocious as he attacked Lu Ping from behind. At this time, Lu Ping had already been restrained by his trump card. Although he could not completely freeze Lu Ping, as long as he could cause a little impact on Lu Ping, it would be enough to put Lu Ping to death in a fight between masters. A dense chill rose from the Blood Shura's hand, condensing into a spirit treasure ice pearl again, and then into an ice sword, about to stab Lu Ping in the back. Suddenly, a thunderclap exploded in midair. The Blood Shura shuddered. When he looked up, he saw a drought thunder exploding above his head. A golden light stretched out in midair with many branches, falling directly on the Blood Shura's head. Een Water Divine Thunder. It was a great thunder magic, the Een Water Divine Thunder. The Blood Shura turned pale with fright. He no longer cared about Lu Ping, who could kill him with a single stab. As he turned around and retreated, the chill around him all condensed towards him. Finally, he wrapped the ice ball around his body again before the divine thunder hit him. All demonic Luos, regardless of whether they were demon cultivators or Shura cultivators, regardless of their cultivation base and strength, had an innate fear of thunder spells. Not to mention that the Een Water Divine Thunder was also a very powerful great skill. When it was cast by Lu Ping, with the help of the Seven Treasures Thunder Gourd, the power of the great skill was increased by another 30%. Even Blood Shura had to use all his life-saving skills to defend himself. This was also why the Yuan family of Middle-earth could become the #1 family. Just by relying on the thunder magic that was passed down through their bloodline, the Yuan family was no less useful than the 6 great sects when Mara had wreaked havoc during the Great Calamity. Lu Ping's great thunder magic not only repelled the Blood Shura, but also completely destroyed the divine art that had been blessed by the Blood Shura within a radius of dozens of meters. Lu Ping's figure flashed as he turned into an escaping light and landed on Frost Island. He glanced back and saw Blood Azura walking out of the shattered ice ball in a sorry state. Clearly, even if the divine Een Water Thunder didn't heavily injure him, it still gave him a great fright. Originally, the Seven Treasures Thunder Calabash had yet to evolve into a spirit-nurturing artifact. Although the power of the Chaos Purple Thunder divine art it had unleashed was far greater than ordinary great arts, and could almost compete with the great art of moving mountains and filling oceans, it was still beyond its power to unleash a single great art, the Een Water Divine Thunder. However, after Lu Ping had refined the Tribulation Lightning Water and advanced to the peak of the core forging realm, Lu Ping had used the Seven Treasures Thunder Calabash to cultivate the Water Attribute Thunder magic alone, and had easily mastered the Een Water Divine Thunder Great Art. Although the Een Water Divine Thunder was not as good as the Chaotic Thunder Light in the Seven Gem Thunder Calabash, its power was considered to be among the best among the great magic skills. In such a chaotic battlefield, the Een Water Divine Thunder Great Magic skill could not be more suitable to not reveal the existence of the Seven Gem Thunder Calabash and still be able to be a trump card to resist Blood Shura. However, it was not possible for Lu Ping to cast other great arts of a single attribute such as the Earth Divine Thunder or the Wood Divine Thunder. Even with the Seven Treasures Thunder Calabash, he could not cast great arts of a single attribute. If Lu Ping hadn't refined the Tribulation Lightning Water, he would have had to find another way to practice the Water Attribute Thunder magic, and he would have had to pay a huge price. Just as Lu Ping had returned to the island's protective formation, the soul-devouring divine art that had gathered hundreds of demonic cultivators finally erupted. An invisible wave swept towards Frost Island amidst the strange sound. Lu Ping turned pale with fright. At this time, not only Lu Ping, but even the Dharma adepts of other sects, other than the middle Dharma adepts of Laozu, could not return to the disciples of their sections. Instead, it was people like Tian Shu Laozu who were weak and could only rely on the protective formation to resist the blood Shura's Dharma power. Because Laozu was close, he was able to turn around and enter the formation. Meanwhile, the two Laozu of Tian Shan and Tian Cheng were even further away from the power of Frost Island than Lu Ping. When the soul-devouring divine art rushed towards him, Lu Ping could only retract his divine consciousness and gather it together to protect himself, hoping that he could withstand the impact of the soul-devouring divine art. At this time, Lu Ping's mind moved, and the small banner rose from the top of Lu Ping's head. Coincidentally, the soul-devouring divine art attacked, and the small banner moved without any wind. In Lu Ping's divine consciousness, the mysterious seal inscriptions on the banner lit up one by one. At the same time, many mysterious seal inscriptions appeared on the blank space of the banner, covering almost half of the banner in an instant. In Lu Ping's divine consciousness, when the soul-devouring divine art rushed in front of Lu Ping, it actually made a strange half-arc, avoiding the impact on Lu Ping, and continued to rush towards the protective formation behind Lu Ping. The divine consciousness that Lu Ping had condensed to resist the soul-devouring divine art was actually useless. However, Lu Ping had no time to be happy. His true essence surged into the small banner from his hand, and he began to refine the new seal inscriptions on the surface of the small banner as he rushed towards the protective formation. Just as he was about to rush into the formation, he heard many Jinling cultivators suddenly exclaim behind Lu Ping. Alarm bells rang in Lu Ping's mind. Blood Azura had actually taken advantage of the soul-devouring divine art of the battle between cultivators and demons just now, and when Lu Ping had completely restrained his divine consciousness, he had actually used an escape technique to catch up with Lu Ping. At this critical moment, Lu Ping only had time to raise the water-controlling flag. The 9 layers of protective aura chi bloomed one by one, interdependent with the water curtain hanging down from the water-controlling flag. At the same time, a huge 9th-grade white jade lotus suddenly appeared under Lu Ping's feet. Whether it was the protective aura chi or the water curtain hanging down from the water-controlling flag, all of them transformed into lotus flowers that bloomed around Lu Ping. Suddenly, there was a rain of ice swords in the sky. No matter which ice sword fell from the sky, each ice sword could cut down a lotus, and even if it did not cut down the lotus, it could still turn the lotus into an ice sculpture. However, every time a lotus was cut down or turned into an ice sculpture, more lotus flowers would regenerate and continue to block the ice sword. During this moment of stalemate, the ice Shura suddenly appeared a few dozen feet in front of Lu Ping. The ice sword reverted back to a meter-wide ice ball, and the ice Shura flung it fiercely at Lu Ping's protective lotus. The ice ball instantly pierced through Lu Ping's protective lotus. Clang! Lu Ping did not even have time to summon his flying sword. His whole body was smashed away amidst the screams of many Jinling cultivators, and his back slammed into Jinling's island protecting formation. Cough, cough. Under Ice Azura's incredulous gaze, Lu Ping, who was bleeding from the corner of his mouth, slowly climbed up from the formation. The island protecting formation climbed up along Lu Ping's body, and seeped into Lu Ping's entire body. Spiritual Master Xian Sen, who was pale from blocking the attack of the demon's soul-devouring divine ability, landed behind Lu Ping. His eyes were filled with anxiety, and he asked, "How is it?" The corner of Lu Ping's mouth lifted, revealing an ugly smile, and he said, "Don't worry, martial uncle. If necessary, I can still fight with that beast." At this time, every Dharma plane cultivator's combat strength was related to the survival of Frost Island. The scene of Lu Ping being smashed away by the Ice Azura was too shocking. Lu Ping had already noticed that not only spiritual master Xian Sen, but also Tian Shu Laozu and Tian Shui Laozu, who had entered earlier, were also rushing towards him. Spiritual Master Xian Sen thought that Lu Ping was trying to be brave, and said, "What is the situation?" Now is not the time to be brave. The damage to your physical body is related to the advancement of your cultivation in the future. Seeing that Tian Shu Laozu was approaching, Lu Ping said in a low voice, "Martial uncle, did you forget about the Linglong wine cauldron? You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.